So, hello everyone. This is the session where we'll be discussing the questions from ancient medieval art and culture and world history, which were asked in 2025, Mains 2025. Okay. So, the first we'll start with art and culture question. Discuss the salient feature of Harappan architecture. Okay. So, how to approach this question? A plain and simple direct question was asked, 10 marker question, 150 words. So, we'll be dividing our approach into, first we'll define about Harappan civilization. First we're writing about Harappan civilization, then basic information, then we'll talk about Harappan architecture, and third part we'll be writing a plain and simple direct conclusion. Okay. So about Harappan civilization, we'll be mentioning Harappan civilization. It flourished along Indus Valley, and because of that, it is also called Indus Valley civilization. Okay. Indus Valley civilization. फिर हम लोग उसके बारे में will be mentioning about the time period, early Harappan phase, mature Harappan phase, and late Harappan phase. ठीक है. Mature Harappan phase, late Harappan phase. We'll also be mentioning the timeline of Harappan civilization, 3,500 years BC till 1500 BC. मोटा मोटा, this is the timeline. ठीक है. तो ये बेसिक चीजें about Harappan civilization will be mentioning in the introduction part. अभी आएगा architecture. So Harappan architecture can be classified into 4 categories. One is urban planning, then housing, then public utilities, and religious architecture. ठीक है. So these are the four categories of Harappan architecture. We'll be tackling them one by one. तो पहले क्या लिखेंगे? पहले लिखेंगे urban planning के बारे में. Urban planning में we'll be mentioning that Harappan cities were divided in a grid-like pattern. ठीक है, in a rectangular grid-like pattern, where streets used to cut each other at right angles. ठीक है, right angles. Then second is underground drainage with manholes and soak pits. उसके बारे में we'll be mentioning. Then we'll be writing Harappan cities were divided into 2 categories, lower town and upper town. Lower town was basically inhabited by commoners, common people. Upper areas, which is also called citadel, these kind of buildings were important administrative and political buildings were there, citadel. These areas were inhabited by rich, wealthy and powerful people. ठीक है, इसके बारे में लिखेंगे urban planning. फिर most of the Harappan cities are fortified cities, such as Dholavira. Dholavira is a fortified city. Even Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, these cities were also fortified cities. तो हमने grid-like pattern के बारे में बात कर लिया. First thing. Second, we discuss about the underground drainage pattern. Then division of city into upper and lower areas. Then we discuss about the fortified cities. And then we mention about citadels. ठीक है, तो ये हो गया urban planning. Housing के बारे में बात करें तो most of the houses, Harappan houses were built of bricks. ठीक है, ईंट के बने थे, not of stone or bamboo huts. They were made of bricks. Multi-story houses. Some of the houses are multi-story also. Next, most of the houses had a kitchen, separate area for kitchen, separate area for washroom. Then separate toilet, attached toilet facility were also there. Then the windows used to open not on the main street but on the sideways for the sake of privacy. Okay? So these are the things we will be mentioning about housing architecture. Public utilities में आपका आएगा basically we'll be writing about granaries. Granaries were large warehouses for storing grains. They are located in, they can be found in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa sites. Okay, granaries. Then assembly hall of Mohenjo-daro, where some kind of meeting was organized. Okay. Then water harvesting structure of Dholavira, okay, for water harvesting, rainwater harvesting. Then dockyards, ancient dockyard has been found from Lothal. Okay, ancient dockyard has been found from Lothal. तो public utilities में आपके आ जाएंगे, dockyard आ जाएगा, granaries आ जाएंगे, ठीक है, dockyard, granaries, ठीक है, water harvesting structure, assembly hall. So these are the things we'll be mentioning under public utilities. अब रिलीजियस आर्किटेक्चर में बेसिकली देखा जाए तो वी हैव नॉट फाउंड एनी टेम्पल. तो एक ही रिलीजियस सिग्निफिकेंस का आर्किटेक्चर है, दैट इज द ग्रेट बाथ विच इज लोकेटेड इन मोहनजोदारो. इट इज मेड ऑफ प्योरली मेड ऑफ ब्रिक्स, नो यूज ऑफ स्टोन. ठीक है. और उसके अलावा वी हैव ऑल्सो यूज सम जिप्सम एंड मोटार थिंग्स इन ऑर्डर टू इंटरलॉक दोज ब्रिक्स एंड मेक दिस इंटायर पॉन्ड. ठीक है, entire pond as a waterproof. ठीक है, उसका ताकि सीपेज ना हो, फॉर दैट पर्पज gypsum and mortar has been used. ठीक है, तो ये same simple direct question. Conclusion, how to write a conclusion. इससे पहले since it is mentioned discuss, we can also add one more paragraph before concluding, and that paragraph will be mentioning कि although Harappan architecture, the information about Harappan architecture may not be sufficient. Why they may not be sufficient? First thing, temples have not been found. Okay, big temples or palaces we have not found from Harappa. So that is a limitation. Second limitation, most of the Harappan sites have been was destroyed by the robbers and looters, or due to lack of care and preservation. ठीक है, तो because of these two limitations, कि we have not found any temple, we have not found any large building, we have not found any palaces, and whatever was there that has been looted. So our knowledge and information related to Harappan architecture remains limited. So this is one insight you can mention in your answer. ठीक है. And then in conclusion, you will be writing that Harappan civilization was well ahead of its time, and it is famous for its elaborate city planning, use of bricks as a primary building material. ठीक है, use of science and technology in building these architectural marvels. ठीक है, ऐसे करके will be basically concluding our answer. तो बहुत ज़्यादा ऐसा, this question is not very like provocative or some kind of discussion or some kind of critical analysis is required. So it is not required. So our answer will be also very plain and simple. Our conclusion will be very plain and simple and direct. ठीक है, ज्यादा कुछ उसमें इधर उधर नहीं करना है. सीधे हम लोग Harappan civilization will be writing the basic information about Harappan civilization in the introduction part. In second part, we'll be directly jumping towards the main core area of the question, body part. And just before conclusion, you can also mention, or you can also include the thing which we just discussed, कि भाई temples, palaces और ये सब चीजें नहीं मिली. You can also use it in the conclusion also. Or if you don't want to use it, so you can have a separate paragraph, very small 2-3 line. You can give, because since palaces, these things have not been found, and most of the Harappan sites were destroyed due to robbery and due to robbery and due to the time and due to lack of care and preservation. ठीक है, our knowledge related to Harappan architecture remains very limited. ठीक है, तो ऐसे करके आप इसको conclude कर सकते हैं. Next question. The sculptures filled the Chandela art form with resilient vigor, breath of life. ठीक है, elucidate दिया है. So सबसे पहले we'll be mentioning about Chandela rulers, basic information about Chandela rulers. Then we'll be mentioning about Chandela temples of basically Khajuraho, and then we will jump to how these about the art form. इसका salient features of this art form. Salient feature of this art form, and then conclusion. तो चंदेला रूलर्स 9 to 13th century, ठीक है, after the downfall of Gurjar Pratiharas, they were the feudatories of Pratiharas. Their capital was Mahoba, ठीक है, Mahoba and Khajuraho. They declined due to rise of Delhi Sultanate. Due to the rise of Delhi Sultanate, Chandela dynasty declined. Temples of Khajuraho. Basically, Khajuraho temple complex has many famous temples like Kandariya Mahadev temple, Lakshman temple. Then we also have Jain temples such as Pashnath temple, Adinath yani Rishabdev temple. So some Jain and Hindu temples can be found in Khajuraho temple complex. Okay. Now we'll be discussing about the features. अब हमें ये लिखना है कि how they are resilient, vigor and breadth of life. ठीक है, art form. So we'll be writing about Chandela temples are basically Nagara temple with intricate carving on its walls. ठीक है, they are basically Nagara style of temple architecture with intricate carving, especially the carvings related to the Mithunas. ठीक है, erotic sculptures. They are famous for erotic sculptures. Then we'll be writing these sculptures are very realistic with special attention on anatomical accuracy. Then next point, these images are very dynamic, means they are not static. Like these the jo statues hain or those images, they are not sitting or standing. They are basically performing some act, more dynamic in nature, more active. They reflect movement and vitality. ठीक है, movement and vitality. They are not static images. ठीक है. Then secular theme like eroticism, heroism, dance themes, music, eroticism, heroism, war, scenes from the war, scenes from battle. These are the common themes which we can find in Khajuraho temple buildings. Then celebration of life. ठीक है, तो अगर आप देखोगे खजुराहो टेम्पल जो the sculptures of Khajuraho are basically Chandela sculptures are basically they celebrate life instead of rigid क्या बोलेंगे rigidity या being frozen or being too much rigid about secularism. Being too rigid about spiritualism, that is also acknowledging the aspect of eroticism, okay, sensuality and eroticism. It also highlights that Arth, Dharma, Kam and Moksha, these are the 4 goals of life. Arth yani money, Dharma yani ki the religion, the duty, Moksha yani salvation, and Kam yani ki our sensual energy, sensuality or sexual energy. It also emphasizes on the importance of sensuality and sexuality and how they are the basis of creativity and creation. ठीक है, basis of creativity and creation. ठीक है. Then we'll write these cultures are more humanistic, more human-centric rather than divine in origin. या डिवाइन इन थीम. तो डिविनिटी से ज्यादा ह्यूमैनिटी पर ज्यादा एम्फेसिस किया गया है. तो मोर एम्फेसिस ऑन ह्यूमैनिटी, ह्यूमन एस्पेक्ट रादर देन डिवाइन एस्पेक्ट. ठीक है, डिवाइन एस्पेक्ट. तो ये दीज आर द फीचर्स विल बी मेंशनिंग. फिर कंक्लूजन में क्या लिखेंगे कि हरप्पन कह रहे हैं चंदेला आर्ट फॉर्म, चंदेला स्कल्पचर्स आर रिफ्लेक्शन ऑफ लाइफ, dynamism and inclusivity. It moves beyond religious rigidity and embraces humanity and celebrate life. ठीक है. It also try to harmonize sacred and sensual aspect of life, spiritual, sacred and sensual aspects of life. ठीक है. Which makes this art form inclusive and human centric. ऐसे करके you will be concluding this answer. ठीक है. तो plain and simple, straight. First we'll writing about the Chandela rulers, then temples of Khajuraho, and we'll also be mentioning some of the famous temples. ठीक है. Then art form के बारे में हम लोग मिथुनास के बारे में will be discussing. We'll also be discussing how it blends, harmonize sensuality with spirituality, how it is secular in, more inclined towards secular aspects of life like dance, music, war, conflict, sensuality. All these things we'll be mentioning, and then in conclusion we'll be writing about how it celebrates life. It is more resilient. How it celebrates life. How it reflects the kama aspect of human life, apart from earth, dharma and moksha. It also give emphasis on the kama aspect. So these are the things we'll be mentioning in this question. ठीक है. चलो. Examine the main aspect of Akbar religious syncretism. ठीक है. Interesting question. So first we'll be writing about Akbar. Then his religious policies. Conclusion. ठीक है. तो 1556 till 1605, Akbar was the third Mughal ruler who, during his time, Mughal empire reached its zenith. ठीक है. Reached its zenith. It was able to consolidate during his time. ठीक है. तो Babur was the founder. Then Akbar was the consolidator of Mughal empire, and the Aurangzeb was the one who expanded the Mughal territory. It was the Akbar who basically sowed the seed, basically made the roots of Mughal rule in India more deep in Indian soil. ऐसा कह सकते हैं. He consolidated Mughal empire in India. अब religious policies में क्या लिखेंगे? तो दीन इलाही, सुलेकुल, इबादत खाना, then his secular, क्या बोलेंगे, his private life and public policies. ठीक है. Deen Ilahi, it was a new religion which was propounded by Akbar. It was not in this religion he did not क्या बोलते हैं, he did not propound any new ideology, but this Deen Ilahi was a kind of mixture drawing best practices from different religious tradition. ठीक है. तो अलग अलग धर्मों से जो उनकी बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस हैं, दे वर मिक्स्ड, एंड दीन इलाही, द रिलीजन ऑफ गॉड, इलाही यानी गॉड, दीन यानी कि फेथ, फेथ ऑफ गॉड यानी रिलीजन ऑफ गॉड वाज एस्टैब्लिश्ड बाय अकबर. ठीक है. इट वाज ओपन फॉर ऑल, ओपन फॉर ऑल. सुलेकुल यानी कि यूनिवर्सल पीस. ठीक है. सुलेकुल. तो सुलेकुल के बारे में वी कैन राइट अबाउट द सेलिएंट फीचर्स ऑफ सुलेकुल: फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन, हार्मनी, सेक्युलरिज्म, ब्रदरहुड, टॉलरेंस. ठीक है. म्यूचुअल को एग्जिस्टेंस. ठीक है. तो सुलेकुल का यही मतलब है कि सबके बीच में भाईचारा, देयर शुड बी काइंड ऑफ फ्रेटर्निटी और ब्रदरहुड इन द सोसाइटी बाय अवॉइडिंग ऑल काइंड ऑफ रिलीजियस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. तो इट वाज बेस्ड अपॉन टॉलरेंस, म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट, म्यूचुअल कोएग्जिस्टेंस, freedom of expression. ठीक है. freedom of expression. So this thing and that thing. Ibadat khana was a place of where religious discussions took place. ठीक है. Religious discussions used to take place in this Ibadat Khana. It was established by Akbar in Fatehpur Sikri. In this Ibadat Khana, Akbar used to invite scholars from different religions such as Christianity, then Zoroastrianism, Jainism, Buddhism, Hinduism. हर धर्म के जो scholars थे, they used to come and some kind of religious discussion, ठीक है, religious dialogue used to take place in this इबादत खाना, ठीक है. So basically it was a place for interfaith dialogue. इबादत खाना जो है, it was a place for interfaith dialogue. प्राइवेट लाइफ और पब्लिक पॉलिसीज के बारे में बात कर लेते हैं. तो प्राइवेट लाइफ की अगर हम बात करें तो he married a Hindu princess, ठीक है. He married a Hindu princess of Amer, कछवाहा राजपूत रूल, उनका नाम था हरखा बाई. देन ही ऑल्सो क्या बोलते हैं, patronized translation of Hindu religious texts such as Mahabharata and Ramayana into Persian, ठीक है. He patronized Dhrupad Sangeet, which was a Hindu religious music. It was patronized by Akbar. Tansen was a Dhrupad musician, ठीक है. Then he also appointed various Hindu and non-Muslim people on higher ranks in his administration, such as Man Singh, ठीक है. Man Singh was also क्या बोलते हैं, his Nauratan. Tansen real name was Ramtanu Pandey. He was also one of his Nauratan, ठीक है. फिर he also patronized Zoroastrian philosophers and scholars. He also draw some Zoroastrian ideas and practices such as fire worshipping. Then he invited Jesuit priests from Goa in his court. Then he also patronized a Jain scholar named Heer Vijay Suri. ठीक है, Heer Vijay Suri. Then he also adopted various Jain practices such as ahimsa. He respected Jain tradition. Certain days of the year, in those days, all animal killings were banned. ठीक है, तो ये सारी चीजें. फिर उसके अलावा he abolished jizya and pilgrimage tax from non-Muslim subjects. ठीक है, jizya and pilgrimage tax. फिर during his time, Bhakti movement reached its zenith. ठीक है. Tulsidas wrote Ramcharitmanas. ठीक है. He also patronized Sufi saints. ठीक है. He also patronized Sufi saints. तो ये सारी चीजें आप लिख सकते हैं. Religious policies which reflects religious syncretism. Syncretism मतलब mixing of various ideas and philosophies. ठीक है. Then conclusion we can write, the policy of religious syncretism, along with his ideological belief, it was also a tool of his statecraft. This religious tolerant policy adopted by Akbar allowed Akbar in gaining the trust and faith of non-Muslim subjects, which reduced conflict and increased acceptance of the Mughal rule. And this is how he was able to consolidate Mughal rule in India without much resistance. And that consolidation can be attributed to the secular and tolerant policies adopted by during the Akbar's reign. ठीक है, इसमें एक footnote ये भी, मतलब for just sake of understanding, the main reason behind the decline of Mughal rule was also the non-secular practices adopted by Aurangzeb. ठीक है, that increased tension and conflict with other rulers and also decreased acceptance of the Mughal rule in Indian soil, on Indian soil. ठीक है, तो expansion के पीछे, the reason behind expansion of Mughal rule in India was tolerant religious policies adopted by Akbar, and the reason behind the downfall was the intolerant religious policies adopted during Aurangzeb. ठीक है, तो इस तरीके से आप लिख सकते हैं. Next question. World history. The French Revolution has enduring relevance to the contemporary world. Explain. तो सबसे पहले देखो इसको simple is, such type of questions can be easily written. First we'll be writing about French Revolution. French Revolution 1789. It was a revolt against oppressive monarchy. ठीक है, it was a revolt against oppressive monarchy, and that culminated into establishment of republican government in France. ठीक है, it was a revolt against oppressive monarchy and ancient system of class privileges. ऐसा लिखेंगे. French Revolution was a revolt against oppressive monarchy and ancient system of class privileges, and that resulted into establishment of republican form of government, ठीक है, in France. तो ये लिखेंगे. फिर रेलेवेंस फॉर द कंटेम्प्रेरी वर्ल्ड, आज के समाज के लिए, आज की दुनिया के लिए इसकी क्या रेलेवेंस है. तो सबसे पहले विल बी फर्स्ट हाईलाइटिंग एंड एक्सप्लोरिंग ऑल द प्रॉब्लम्स विच कंटेम्प्रेरी वर्ल्ड इज फेसिंग, लाइक टेररिज्म, कम्युनलिज्म, ठीक है, डिक्लाइन ऑफ डेमोक्रेटिक ethos, war, conflict, increasing inequality, ठीक है, authoritarianism, then crony capitalism, privatization, marginalization of weak, ठीक है, marginalization of weak, then marginalization, conflict, terrorism, ठीक है, then some rise of religious fundamentalist groups such as Islamic terror groups, ठीक है. These are the problems which world is facing today, ठीक है. अब इसमें जो है एक और लिख सकते हैं, ह्यूमन राइट वायोलेशन, फॉर एग्जांपल गाजा, ह्यूमन राइट वायोलेशन, then global order is in free fall due to establishment of authoritarian government in America. So these are the things we can just highlight which modern world is facing. अब इसमें लिखेंगे कि फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन, हाउ फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन का रेलेवेंस क्या है. So it was the French Revolution which highlighted that political democracy is useless without economic and social democracy. कि सिर्फ डेमोक्रेसी अडॉप्ट कर लेने से we are not going to gain much. We are also have the responsibility to bring economic and social democracy for all. ठीक है. People should have food on the plate. ठीक है. Food on the table. ठीक है. There should not be any marginalization and exploitation of weak in the society. The first thing, that only political democracy will not suffice. It has to be followed by, or it has to be accompanied by social and economic democracy. Then freedom of expression, brotherhood, liberty, equality, fraternity. Then welfare state, ठीक है, welfare state. Then human centric approach towards development, ठीक है, human centric approach towards development. Then abolition of class privileges and bring equality in the society, ठीक है, bring equality in the society. Then decentralization of power. Then फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन ऑल्सो कॉशन अस अगेंस्ट पर्सनैलिटी कल्ट, क्योंकि वहां पे रेन ऑफ टेरर के टाइम पे, जैकोबिन्स के टाइम पे क्या हुआ था, पर्सनैलिटी कल्ट के बारे में हमें कॉशन करता है. हीरो वर्शिपिंग, जैसे नेपोलियन के केस में क्या हुआ, हीरो वर्शिपिंग. तो दैट फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन ऑल्सो कॉशन अस अगेंस्ट हीरो वर्शिपिंग. देन फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन ऑल्सो espouse the cause of secularism, कि why secularism is important, why religious affairs, why religion should be separated from the public affairs or the government affairs, secularism. ठीक है. Then why institutional autonomy is important. कि why institutions should be made autonomous, or they should be made independent from private influences. Otherwise, what will happen? The government or the administration or the institutions will be hijacked by the radical groups, जैसा कि reign of terror के time पे हुआ. So these are the things we can mention. Then French Revolution also cautioned us against chaos, instability, radicalization and populism. ठीक है. It also cautions us against populism. कि भाई what is basically liked by the majority of the people does not mean that is a right thing to do. ठीक है. Does not mean that is the right thing to do. Because what happened in French Revolution, most of the people were eyeing for Republican form of government. ठीक है. पर Republicanism या Republican state establish करने के लिए, in order to achieve the goal of Republican state, bloodbath happened in France. ठीक है. तो ये है कि भाई पॉपुलर ओपिनियन डज नॉट मीन इट इज ऑल्सो राइट ओपिनियन. तो व्हाट इज एथिकल, व्हाट इज करेक्ट, दैट शुड बी द राइट थिंग टू डू इंस्टेड ऑफ अपीजिंग द masses. Then French Revolution also caution us against majoritarian democracy. Majoritarianism नहीं होना चाहिए. ठीक है. Majoritarianism नहीं होना चाहिए. Then it also talks about separation of power, checks and balances in order to avoid any abuse of power. ठीक है. Abuse of power. Then it also highlight the need for public participation in government affairs. कि people should be vigilant. People should participate. They should be active participant rather than passive recipient of the government policies. ठीक है. तो ये सारी चीजें, these are the things which have been highlighted by the French Revolution. French Revolution also highlight the need for mainstreaming of the marginalized section of society, especially the women. ठीक है. Women को किस तरीके से लाना चाहिए mainstream में, how the rights and the rights of women should be safeguarded. ठीक है. Against the oppressive patriarchal norms of the society. ठीक है. तो these are the things which we can write about French Revolution. ठीक है. So अब conclusion में क्या लिखेंगे? तो conclusion में लिखेंगे कि French Revolution marks the departure of human civilization from the medieval age to the modern age. ठीक है. Modern age. It was for the first time the ethos or the ideas of Renaissance were put into test and practice. ठीक है. Put into test and practice. Although the revolution is over, but the ethos and the ethics and the values of French Revolution are still relevant today. ठीक है. In order to tackle modern day problems of human civilization, the ideas of ethos of French Revolution can act as our guiding light. ठीक है. तो इस तरीके से ये थोड़े से jargons and these words we can use in order to highlight the fact that French Revolution still holds its value today. ठीक है. तो चलो, तो this was all about GS1 paper related to world history and history portion, world history and art and culture, ancient medieval history. So thanks for watching. Have a nice day. All the best.
So the next question is from modern history. We have one question from modern history this time. It's on Mahatma Jyoti Phule. His writings and efforts of social reforms touched, what does it say? It is asking about writings and efforts, okay, of social reforms touched issues of almost all subaltern classes, okay. So that question is saying that what were the efforts and works taken by Mahatma Jyotirao Phule for the upliftment of various subaltern groups. See, this question, it was not a surprise because this time a movie was released on Jyotiba Phule and there was a lot of controversy regarding him. There were many articles also that appeared in the prominent newspapers like the Hindu and the Indian Express. So it was not really a surprise. This question was on expected lines. However, generally the unexpected part about this question was, first, that UPSC generally avoid things which are too much in the news, that too in such a recent past. So it was a surprise that it was so much in news and yet it was asked. And secondly, if we look at the history of UPSC, it has not focused so much on any of the reformers to ask about their writings and efforts in the recent past. So therefore, it was a surprising question in that way. But if you see the context of the question, that it was in news regularly, articles were appearing about his works, about his efforts. Specifically, there is a lengthy article in the Hindu, maybe in April, that had appeared. So this was not a really surprising question in that way. Now, this question, it is asking about subaltern groups. So basically, whatever history that we study till now, it is generally in the mainstream that we study, it is called history from above. That is the mainstream history, which is talking about, which focuses on the Indian National Congress. It talks about leaders like Gandhi. It talks about leaders like prominently Jawaharlal Nehru, maybe Subhash Chandra Bose. However, the subaltern perspective, that is what were the common people thinking or what were their ideas about these events unfolding, they are not usually discussed in our curriculum. So it is a move in asking a question on history from below. What does this mean? This means the bottom-up approach. Bottom-up approach. Why it is important for us to analyze this, that now we have to take care of the subaltern perspective also. We have to look at events from different perspectives, and more UPSC has been focusing on this subaltern history, that Gandhiji was there in the freedom struggle, but who else except Gandhiji, right? Which other voices are prominent during the Gandhian phase of freedom struggle? So this is one aspect. Two things that we have seen, that it was in news. Second, it is asking question from a different perspective, maybe from more left-leaning perspective, subaltern, common people. The third thing that we need to know about this is that the question on Jyotiba Phule or his name has been repeatedly appearing in the UPSC. For instance, a question was asked on Jyotiba Phule in the year 2016 prelims. So that was the question on Satya Shodhak Samaj, a very simple, straightforward question on Satya Shodhak Samaj. Then in the year 2021, Jyotiba Phule or Jyotirao Phule, he appeared as the option in two of the questions. One more question was on Vitthal Vidvanshak, okay, in 2021, and the other question, it was on self-respect movement. But Jyotiba Phule's name was mentioned, which shows that he figures continuously in the thinking of UPSC. So we know that the option of 1 year can be the main theme of a question in the forthcoming or the coming years. So questions have been asked on him regularly. Now let us come to the question itself and the solution, how you should have approached this. See, the operational words, obviously, Jyotiba Phule, his writings, his efforts in social reform, obviously, okay, and the various subaltern classes, okay. Now see, when we talk about subaltern groups means groups like untouchables, okay, that is the Dalits, the depressed classes or the untouchables. Then the poor peasants, or we can call them even at this point of time the sharecroppers, right? They were tilling the land as shared croppers. They did not have any security of tenure, okay. And then obviously the tribals, the women, the labor, and finally the minorities. So these are the people who are generally referred in historiography as subaltern groups, but one should not assume that just because the word subaltern groups is mentioned, it is a question from historiography or it is a very technical question. Subaltern has also become a term of common parlance in history, even when you are studying it from GS perspective. So, perspective of historians such as A.R. Desai, Sumit Sarkar, Partha Chatterjee. So, all these people, they are called as the subaltern historians, or they are the Marxist historians. Okay. Now, the question is very straightforward. What is it saying? And how do we need to begin this question? So our question or our answer will revolve around the works and efforts of Jyotiba Phule, Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, in respect of all these groups. Prominently, even among them, if I have to shortlist, it would be for untouchables, for the poor peasants, for the women, and for the labor. These are the four important constituencies in the subaltern group where Jyotiba Phule has focused. Okay. Now, let us begin the question. Our introduction, if possible, as I have always been asking you people, I have been informing you people that if possible, please mention the lifetime of the personality. So, Mahatma Jyoti Rao Phule, we will use the spelling and the words used in the question. Jyotiba Phule, 1827. So it is always better to mention their lifetime, 1827 to 1890. Okay, 1827 to 1890 was a radical social reformer in 19th century. Maharashtra, or maybe we can mention, if we want to be technically right, we can mention Bombay. Okay. Bombay Presidency even. Let us be more safe to give it a very historical tinge. Let us mention Bombay Presidency. This is one thing. See, it is a 15 marker. The introduction has to be of 3 to 4 lines. Okay. First. Second, we will mention that he is also being referred as father of Indian social revolution. This is another thing that we will remember about him. Okay. Then we will also mention that he was given the title of Mahatma in the year 1888, recognizing his works. So in 1888 by Vitthal Rao Krishnaji. Vitthal Rao Krishnaji. In 1888, he gave him, Vitthal Rao Krishnaji Vandegarkar, he gave him the title of Mahatma. So this shows the examiner that we have very good static hold also. It is not just the gyan, the analysis that we are going to produce. We are aware of the facts. When analysis is grounded in facts, it becomes more reliable and more trustworthy for the examiner. Okay. Then maybe we can mention a line about the inspirations. A brief line, only one sentence. Okay. If you want, you can. Otherwise, there is no need. Okay. One sentence about the inspiration of Jyotirao Phule. They were the Bhakti saints. No need to mention which saints, Namdev, Tukaram. We don't need to mention all that. Bhakti saints, as well as the Western thought. For instance, the work of Thomas Paine, his works like Age of Reason. Age of Reason is an important work of Thomas Paine, or The Rights of Man. That is another work published in 1791. Maybe if you want, you can mention that. Okay. Now you give the context to your answer. Okay. This is the introduction. See, usually the answer should be divided into introduction, context, then the themes, body of the answer, that is in the themes, the various body of the answer and the conclusion. Then if we talk about the context of the question, then we will say that he worked for various subaltern groups through his lifetime, and we will mention the various subaltern groups that I had already referred to. So he worked for the emancipation of Dalits, empowerment of the women, and the support for the toiling peasants, something like that, workers and the minorities. Now comes the body of the answer. In the body of the answer, there are the various themes. Prominently, we will choose first the depressed classes. The depressed classes, that is one theme. Then we will choose, so the depressed classes, that is one theme. Then women, that is another theme. Then peasants, that is another theme. Peasants, another theme. And maybe the minorities, okay, and obviously the labor. So these are the people for whom he has prominently worked. Now various works in each and every one of these, if it is a 15 marker, in total we have to mention at least 15 points. So if we are taking 5 themes, then maybe total we have to come up with 15 points, so as not to give the examiner any reason for deducting our marks. Okay, so I will erase this. I'll erase this. Now for the depressed classes, his important works include Satyashodhak Samaj in 1863. So in Satyashodhak Samaj, all people of all communities were welcome, people of all gender were welcome, people of all religions were welcome. Okay. So mention Satyashodhak Samaj, it was an anti-untouchability society. Okay, it rejected the intermediaries, whatever you can remember about Satyashodhak Samaj. It rejected priest as an intermediary between man and God. Okay, so maybe Satyashodhak Samaj you can mention. Then Gulamgiri, his important work. So this is an organization, Gulamgiri, in 1873. This is also actually 1873. They were in the same year. So 1873, Gulamgiri. It is a book on slavery. In this, he compared the situation of the slaves or the blacks in America to the Shudras and Ati Shudras in India. That how they are being exploited by the people who are in better positions than them. So he equated the situation of slaves in America to the Shudras and Ati Shudras in India. Okay. Then third work, Dharma Tritya Ratna, 1855. This was the exposure of Puranas. What does he do in this? In this, it is basically a dialogue between a Brahmin and a Kunbi women, and it shows that how the Brahmin exploits the women, citing the religion, citing his astrological knowledge or religious knowledge. So exposure of the Puranas, and in this he says that how the upper caste are using the religious text to exploit the lower caste. Okay. Then Brahmanache Kasab. So that was book, Brahmanache Kasab. It was published in 1889. It is again a very similar work. It was written in form of a poem, and it was to also convince the British government to educate the lower castes. Okay, so it was making an appeal to that so that they can be relieved from the relieved from the slavery of the Brahmins. Okay, so these are the important works. If you mention 4, it is more than enough. Maybe you can mention more also, but this should suffice. Okay, then maybe you can mention the works for minorities. Okay, the works for minorities. It is better if you have points for this, it is better to write it earlier, because sometimes the examiner may not have the patience to go through the entire paper. So if he sees that usually people would not have written what his works were about the minorities. So if you mention that early, it would put you in better light. So minorities, his work, Satsar. So Satsar was published in 1885. It is basically the essence of truth. Satsar in 1885 is essence of truth. In this book, he is defending Pandita Ramabai. Pandita Ramabai, she was earlier the founder of Arya Mahila Samaj for the education and emancipation of higher caste Hindu women in Pune. So Pandita Ramabai had converted to Christianity, and he was defending the right of Pandita Ramabai to convert to Christianity. And it is a dialogue. Satsar is a dialogue between a Brahman and a Shudra. Then his another work, Manav Muhammad. Manav Muhammad. See, Manav Muhammad is not really a complete book. Rather, we can say that it is a abhang. It is part of another work. So what is abhang? Abhang, we can say these are sacred poems in Marathi, and it was part of the work Akhandani Kavyachana or Kavyachana. Okay, Akhandani Kavyachana. So basically, in Manav Muhammad, he is extolling the qualities of Prophet Muhammad, that how he elevated or how he relieved his people from sufferings and brought them out of the desert. And he broke many superstitions. So how he broke the yoke of superstitions and orthodoxy. It is about that. Then, so these are the points on depressed classes and minorities. Then his major contribution has been for the peasants, especially poor peasants, Dalit peasants, where the economic and social factors combine, or maybe you can call them even sharecroppers. Okay, so his important work is Shetkaryacha Asud. So that is the cultivator's whipcord. In this work, published in the year 1883. Okay. See, if you remember the year, it is good enough. If you don't remember, that is fine. Right. But generally, we would remember the works and the years because we study them for prelims. We don't study these works in detail. Okay, but when we are preparing for prelims, we study the organizations, important works, and Jyotiba Phule is one of the prominent reformers. So maybe you could remember or not. That would not be such a major issue, right? You have to just write better than what the others are writing. So in this Shetkaryacha Asur, he showed that how religious and economic factors come together to exploit the peasants, the poor peasants, and especially the Dalit peasants. Okay. In this, he criticized the British revenue officials also. See, he has also written several times to the British officials to return the grazing land to the peasants, which has now been categorized as the forests by the officials. So he writes to them also. Then he has criticized the high land revenue system also. Okay. Then for labor or for the peasants and workers, if we take it together, then he was also one of the founders of the newspaper Deen Bandhu. Deen Bandhu means friend of the poor. So this newspaper was started in the year 1877. Okay, so he was one of the co-founders of the newspaper Deenbandhu. In fact, he also, इसी में workers भी कर देते हैं. In fact, he was also the founder of, or with his inspiration, the Bombay Mill Hands Association was also formed. So Bombay Mill Hands Association was basically formed by N.M. Lokhande, and one of the major inspiration behind this, behind the establishment of Bombay Mill Hands Association was Jyotiba Phule. Okay. Then he also advocated for the night schools for the labor. You can write then better working conditions, all that can be written, right? Then Satya Shodhak Samaj it also acted like, Deenbandhu also acted as a mouthpiece of the Satya Shodhak Samaj. N.M. Lokhande has credited Phule for lot of ideas on formation of egalitarian society. You would know that N.M. Lokhande is known as the father of Indian trade unionism, right? Okay. Then one of his major work is for the women. You would know that he taught his wife Savitribai Phule to read and write. In fact, in the year very early in their life, in 1848, when he was 21 years old, 1848, he set up the first school for female education. First school for female education. Then Bal Hatya Prabandhak Griha. Bal Hatya So there was this major case in Maharashtra where a woman had become pregnant and she delivered a child, a Brahmin woman, and because of the fear of ostracization from the society, she killed her child, and this was later reported, and this woman was arrested. And moved by and shocked by this event, Savitribai Phule and Jyotiba Phule opened the Bal Hatya Pratibandhak Griha in the year 1863. In Pune. So if anyone was going to have a child and they were not happy, they were not willing to keep it, they could deliver the child there in this location, in this organization, secretly, and they could move away. They did not have to take the ownership or the parent be recognized as the parents of the child, and they would be raised by Jyotiba Phule and his wife. Okay. Then his final major work was Sarvajanik Dharma Pustak. Sarvajanik Dharma Pustak. So this was their major work, last major work. It was published in the year 1891, in which he asserted that men and women both have equal rights, and he says that it is sinful to discriminate people on the basis of sex. Along with this, he has also inspired people like Tarabai Shinde. So Tarabai Shinde, she wrote a very famous poem, Sri Purush Tulna, in which she compares the men and women, and she appeals to God, questions him that why he has created women to be physically weaker than the man. Okay, so it was one of the earliest feminist critiques in modern India. Okay, then he has, maybe if you want, if you have some space, you can mention. Generally, we studied that he was a critic of Congress, and he says that it is the Congress is merely providing lip service till it does not do something for the upliftment of the weaker sections of the society. It cannot claim to be a national party. Then maybe you can even highlight the humanism, that humanism and universalism that was preached by Jyotiba Phule. ठीक है? Humanism and universalism by Jyotiba Phule. And finally, maybe a quote on him or a long-term impact, that how inspired by him B.R. Ambedkar became the prominent proponent of the rights of the depressed classes, Pune Pact, or maybe the reservation in the post-independent India is an inspiration or a result of the work of Jyotiba Phule. And Ambedkar had called him the greatest Shudra in the modern India. So something like that you can write and conclude this answer. Okay. So let's look at the question from post-independence history or post-independence consolidation. The question says, this is again a very repeated theme. We have seen it again and again in the past. So it says trace India's consolidation process. Okay. During early phase of independence, maybe it is talking about maybe 1940s to maybe 60s, 1947 to 60s, not more than that usually, in terms of polity, but it has given you a clear demand of the question: polity, economy, education, and international relations. Very in that way, all your whatever you may have studied in preparation of UPSC can be utilized here. The political changes, advancements that we saw, economic changes that you study in the initial parts of your economy, in education sector, the initial efforts that were made, and how we navigated through the international relations during when India was a newborn nation. Again, let us clearly recognize that it says trace. When the word is trace, you are supposed to write in a chronological order. Okay. In a chronological order, that gradually how things evolved. Okay. See, a similar question was earlier asked in the year 2021. So that was about administrative and socio-cultural issues that were encountered in the integration of the princely state. So similar question has been asked again. And another question, yeah. So that was also a 15 marker. And very clearly, good thing is that the themes, there are 4 themes in this answer. Write an introduction and elaborate on the 4 themes, how many ever points you may have. So if we talk about the introduction, okay, if we talk about the introduction of this question, then you will talk about that India gained its independence. Just showcase your knowledge of history also, modern history also. So clearly say that, mention that India gained its independence on 15th August 1947. So examiner may be bored of seeing this date. Maybe you don't need to mention India gained its independence through the Mountbatten Plan. This you can mention, Mountbatten Plan or the 3rd June Plan, right? Then you will mention the various colonial legacy or the challenges. You have mentioned this. Then you will mention the various challenges, or maybe if you don't even want to mention this, you can mention the colonial legacy because it is just introduction. So mention the colonial legacy in the various spheres. That education, the literacy rate was only 18%. There was economic deindustrialization. There was underdevelopment. There was agrarian poverty. There was shortage of food. So, and then after the colonial legacy, divide and rule, communalism, all that you mention, then maybe you mention the various challenges that faced the country. So what, with respect to the themes that we have now, okay, now we specific challenges. What are these? Preparing or framing a constitution or drafting a constitution. Then integration. One is the integration of the 562 princely states. Second, you will mention the drafting of a constitution. Then you will mention reviving the economy. Then you will mention promotion of education, right? Or expanding education. Then finally, navigating the Cold War politics or Cold War geopolitics. Now, all these were the challenges that faced the country. You can write this also if you do not want. You can mention these, okay? Because all this will constitute the introduction and the context. If you want to set the context, you will use this. This all will be part of your introduction. Then we begin with the main body of the answer, in which there is no need to explain how you are going to write, what will be the themes of the answer, because it is clearly given in the body. So if we have the 4 parts that have been given in what is the word they have used? Polity. So first you will mention 1947 to 49, the integration of the princely states. In this you can mention the example of Hyderabad. You can mention through police action, right? Operation Polo. Then you can mention Jammu and Kashmir. Then through a war with Pakistan, an instrument of accession. Then you can mention Junagadh. So in Junagadh also there was a plebiscite in the year 1948. So you don't need to get into too much detail, but the integration of the various states. This was the first challenge to avoid the balkanization of the country. And yes, in this, please mention the name of Sardar Patel, and more importantly, VP Menon, who was the Secretary for State Affairs for the various Governor Generals, and then for the Home Member. Then you will talk about the Constitution, whichever date you want to mention, 26 January 1950 or 26th November 1949. Please mention the date of adoption or the date of coming into force. Any of those dates will be sufficient. Then this constitution, you mention its various aspects, like contrary to what the cabinet mission had recommended, it was unitary, it was based on unitary model. Then we went for the model of parliamentary democracy. Then we declared India as a republic. If you wish, you can even mention the name of Ambedkar. Okay, Ambedkar. Then politically, the next thing was the first election. Okay, the first elections. Please mention the largest electorate in the history participated in these elections, the first general elections in the year 1951. There were about 17 crore voters. Okay, world's largest electorate, of whom 85% were illiterate. Okay, Surya Kumar Sen was the chief election commissioner, if you want to mention that. So these at that point of time were the largest elections in the history of the world. A huge challenge for a nascent nation. Okay. Then you mention the linguistic states. Okay, I'll write here only. The linguistic states. You can mention the example of Andhra Pradesh. Then you can mention the States Reorganization Act 1956, which created 14 states and 6 union territories. No need to mention so many details. Then you can mention that we harmonized the linguistic differences through the 8th schedule. 8th schedule in 1950, which was part of the original constitution. Okay. Then politically, the end of colonial enclaves. That is the end of French. Please mention it. End of French occupation in 1954 through an agreement, and annexation of Portuguese annexation of Goa, right? Daman Diu annexation after police action through Operation Vijay, right? Or army action through Operation Vijay in 1961. So all this consolidated India into a united democratic republic, okay, with immense diversity, right? Then after politics, the question is asking about economy, okay, the economy. So in this you mention that we went for a constitution of planning commission, the 5-year plans, okay. 1951 to 56 was the first plan with the focus on agriculture. Almost 31% of the outlay was for agriculture. This was in light of the shortage of the food products. In wake of Second World War, we had witnessed a major famine. Therefore, that was our urgent priority, food security in the nation. Okay. Then Mahalanobis model. This was for capital formation or focus on heavy industries. Along with this, you can mention Nehru's remark, the temples of modern India, the Bhagda Nankal Dam, the various public sector, Damodar Valley project, various public sector undertakings like Bhilai Steel Plant with the assistance of USSR, Rourkela with the assistance of Germany, Durgapur with the assistance of UK. So all these you can mention. Then industrial policy resolution. Industrial policy resolution of 1956, or the Awadi resolution that was passed by the Indian National Congress. Then the various land reforms that were taken by the state agencies, and the abolition of zamindari, which resulted in 2 crore landless peasants acquiring ownership of land. Then for the self-sufficiency in the villages, we had the community development program. This community development program you can mention in education also, which whatever you wish, wherever you wish, you can mention this. Okay. Then maybe in 60s you can mention nationalization of bank. I would avoid it. HAL was there, but it was already there since 1940. Okay. So this is in economy. Next is in education. Okay. So next aspect, it is in education. So we have already mentioned that when India gained its independence, the literacy rate was only 18% in 1951. Okay. Please highlight the role of Maulana Azad as the first education minister. Okay, first education minister. Then you can mention the constitution or the article 45, which talks about, that is the DPSP, which talks about the right to free education for children between 6 to 14 years, free and compulsory education. Maybe earlier you could have also mentioned 1948-49, the Radha Krishna Commission. Radha Krishnan Commission in the year 1948-49. Then in 52 there was the Mudliar Commission. Okay, 1952 there was the Mudliar Commission. They were both for improving the educational higher education. This was for higher education and this was for education overall. Then in 1951, what happened? 1951, IIT Kharagpur. IIT Kharagpur was formed. If you mention only one, that is sufficient. IIT Bombay 58, don't need to get into so much detail. Okay, why were these formed? To groom the brightest minds, to groom the brightest minds of the country, so that the development of India could become indigenous, right? That they would help in building an industrial India. Then 1953, in education, very important, UGC was formed, which in 1956 attained statutory status. It was for, what was the main objective? It was to coordinate and standardize the higher education and maintaining teaching and research quality. Okay, and providing financial support. But if you can just mention coordinating and standardizing the higher education, that would be sufficient. Okay, in 1956, AIMS was set up in Delhi. Now we have in every part of the country. So AIMS was set up in Delhi. Maybe 1961, IIMs were set up. So first was the IIM Calcutta and Ahmedabad. They were formed on the model of MITs and Harvard. Okay, with the support. Then maybe we can mention that INCOSPAR was also formed, which was the precursor, if you want, the premier institutes, but it is not a technically educational institution. But you can mention that INCOSPAR was set up for providing scientists, right? Then Tumba Equatorial Launch Site, maybe that can also be presented, right? In education, as a result of this, in 1956, the Apsara nuclear reactor was formed. As a result of this, Apsara nuclear reactor was formed, which was the first nuclear reactor of Asia at that point of time. And as a result of all this, see, literacy rate in British India increased only from 3 to 18% between 1757 to 1947. But due to the actions of these, due to the efforts of Government of India, just between 1951 and 61, the education or the literacy rate increased from 18% to 28%. Okay, just in a period of 10 years. Okay, and finally, the international relations. You can write a lot here too. International relations. So in international relations, what will you talk about? In international relations, you will mention first the challenges of war with Pakistan. War with Pakistan in 1947-48. Even before this, India was the first country. The Indian leaders were the first in 1946 to criticize the apartheid in the UN. Okay. Then in 1949, we joined the Commonwealth. To build a bridge to build a bridge between the east and the west. In 1950, we tried to, now we say try to, but at that point of time, we were very happy. We were the first country in the world to recognize China, and we supported the decolonization. In Indonesia, Asia, various countries in Asia and Africa, for instance, Burma and such. In 1954, the Panchsheel. See, I am mentioning a lot of points. If you could have mentioned 3 or 4 points in each one, that would be more than enough. 3 or 4 points in each dimension, that would be more than enough. Then the Panchsheel principles for the peaceful coexistence with China. But later we had a fight with them in 1962. Panchsheel, you can mention the name of Zhou Enlai also. Then 1955. In 1955, we have the Bandung Conference in Indonesia, where we spoke about Asia and Africa solidarity. There were leaders like Nehru, Nasser, Sukarno. Okay, Zhou Enlai obviously was there. In 1956, during the Suez crisis, we criticized the actions of France and UK and supported Egypt. Right, we criticized the actions of British, French, and Israelis and took sides with Egypt, supporting Nasser's assertion of sovereignty. Okay, in 1961, obviously, 1961, NAM was formed. Don't talk about Hungarian crisis, dikkat ho jayegi. So we spoke about the NAM. We were the founding members of NAM at Belgrade. So Nehru, Tito, Nasser, there was the collective non-alignment was reconfirmed. Then in 1962, that the Panchsheel collapsed and India re-evaluated its defense. Maybe we can say that 1962, after the Sino-India War, India re-evaluated its defense. Okay, the ordnance factories and the what they were going to function, what they were going to do, all that was reevaluated. In 1960, earlier you could have mentioned, international relations, there are so many points. We had peace treaties with Nepal, friendship treaties. We had Indus Water Treaty backed by UN with Pakistan that showed us as a responsible newborn nation and as a benevolent newborn nation. Then with Bhutan, we had a treaty in 1949. Sri Lanka, we had a treaty in 1964. So all that you can mention. All this showed that India had emerged as the leader of the third world and a moral voice at the UN. Even when France, Israel, and UK were supported by USA, we criticized the actions of these powers. Okay. But then you talk about finally, the final theme of this, I would like that you mention before you conclude some persisting challenges. Not exactly related to the question, but yes, you can mention some persisting challenges till this date. So you can mention the linguistic challenges, ethnic challenges, separatist movements in various parts of the country, economic challenges that we are facing, inequality, agrarian problems, agrarian distress that we are facing, maybe the literacy, female literacy we can mention, okay, quality of higher education we can mention, foreign dilemmas you can mention about the Galwan crisis or the border dispute with China and Pakistan conflict. You can also mention how India is trying to balance Russia, USA, and China. It is currently ongoing. So I hope you people have mentioned that. And finally, in the conclusion, maybe you can summarize all your arguments, okay? Or you can end with a quote about how India is rising and the future prospect of the country, that this is how now we have with Moon 3, with Chandrayaan 3. We have landed on the moon, and it makes India the first nation to land at the south pole of the moon, right? Showcasing our elite status, and we taking our rightful place in the global geopolitics. Okay. So that is how you can conclude your answer. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Now we are going to discuss the questions asked in the physical geography. This question we are directly starting with. This question is about how the climate change and the sea level rise affecting the very existence of some islands, discussed with example. So this is of 10 marks. You are supposed to discuss how exactly this is affecting and then put a lot of examples if you have. Now, let me discuss this in general. First, what are the very, let's say, areas which are going to be affected? We will discuss that. Before going into that, you can start your question. Let's say you can start your question with this one. Let's say in the introduction, you can give the reference of Assessment Report 6 in 2023, which was made by IPCC. Now, in this report, IPCC clearly mentioned that the rise of sea level is much faster in this 20th century compared to the other centuries. And that is majorly contributed by the climate change, or we can say the rising temperatures, right? And in that way, they concluded that 10 centimeter water levels have so far risen in last 30 years. Okay, so in that way, you can start your question. Now see here, starting this question with the help of some data or something. Now you can start with, let's say, how climate change, let's say this is climate change, and sea level rise. They are creating trouble for the island states, especially many island nations they have talked about. So whatever the examples that we will put in, they are going to be primarily from the islands. Now I am just telling you in general, what are the areas which are more affected by this two, that is climate change and sea level rise? Now, if I talk about number one, those are the atoll island countries or nations, right? Atoll island. For example, they are nothing but they are right in the middle of the ocean, and here this island is surrounded by the lagoons. Now, what happens is this kind of example. For example, you can see Kiribati Island, Vanuatu, okay, Vanuatu. These are the examples of such islands. They are going to be impacted worst because they are the atoll islands located in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by the lagoon groups, right? The second area which is going to be, let's say, affected, that is in the Arctic region and in the Russian areas and Russian communities. Now, these Russian communities, or you can say somewhat around Alaska, the northern Canada, the Russian, means near the Arctic. Now, these communities are dependent mostly on the local practices of fishing and subsistence fishing it is. Okay. So when this climate change is hitting them, so what is happening? The Arctic ice caps are melting. Due to this melting, their land areas are getting submerged. And this is impacting this subsistence practices. And that is the second most affected area. Third area is going to be the let's say the rich agricultural region where the deposits of deltas are there. And for example, here we can take the example of Mekong Delta, okay, in this Vietnam. Then we have the Indo-Gangetic Brahmaputra Delta shared by this India and Bangladesh. Now what happens is when we talk about this third area, how it is impacted much. Now because of this climate change, sea level is rising. And also due to the climate change, see here, the intensity of the storms, cyclones, okay, the impacts like El Nino and La Nina, they are also changing because of what? Because of this climate change. And due to all this phenomena, El Nino and La Nina, they can also shortly, means for short term, they can also impact the level of sea. Okay. Now, what is happening in these areas of I'm talking about the India, Bangladesh or Indo-Brahmaputra, this Ganga Delta, in that area because of erosion, because of the storm's intensity, we are losing area here. Number one, because of the sea erosion. Second, we are also losing our mangroves. Third, we are also losing infrastructure here because of this significant events of storm, cyclones, and this often occurring floods. Okay. Now see here. This and fourth reason, the fourth area which is going to be affected mostly, they are going to be the resource rich areas. For example, if I take that is Houston in USA, then you can also take the example of Shanghai. It is also located in the coastal area, heavily invested in infrastructure here where China especially has invested. Now, such areas are also vulnerable because of this climate change and sea level rise. They may lose their infrastructure. They are also densely populated areas. So this is, I'm telling you, overall impact. But UPSC is more interested in about island nations. Now, what happened recently? This is Vanuatu, and Vanuatu reached to the international ICJ. Now, in this ICJ, they appeal that the climatic responsibility should have some legal backing. Why? Because they were at the receiving end, especially these island countries, they are at the receiving end. The first impact will be visible to their country very soon because they are going to submerge. Not I am saying that, it is many reports are mentioning, and therefore they reach to the ICJ. Now, see here, because they are asking about the main island countries, we will talk about the examples. Now, see here, what is happening? The main reason of this, let's say, sea level rise is climate change. And especially if you will see, it is the land-based glaciers which are causing 40% is the reason. They are the 40% responsible for what? For this rising sea level. And then it is the oceans themselves, because they are becoming warmer day by day due to this ocean acidification. Due to this, let's say, they are absorbing more and more CO2. So what is happening? They are also absorbing the heat which is available in the atmosphere, and in that way they are becoming warmer too. So number one, the melting of the glaciers on the land especially. The second, because of the sea ice which is available in the seas and oceans, that is also now melting because of what? Because of the temperatures of the oceans have increased now. So due to these two reasons, mainly, I'm saying mainly what is happening, the sea levels are changing, and there are so many regional variations of this sea level change are there. Okay, now see here the examples. Now you are supposed to put in the examples. So examples, if I take one by one. So for example, there is let's say I have the examples. Let's say flooding will be very often. Why flooding will be very often? Because of the sea level is rising. And one more thing, let me tell you this one as well. Just give me a minute. Now see here. Now see here. What will be the impacts? The one is going to be flooding. Now why this, let's say, flooding is so common there, and what other impacts you will see here? Now if you see the areas which are coastal areas are known for rivers, estuaries, and therefore the water level is also higher there. Means water table is also at, let's say, higher levels. Now what happens is, whenever there is water, too much water on the surface, and water table is shallower, so what happens is it provides difficulty. It creates difficulty in, let's say, percolating this water here, and it results into often floods. So floods are very common in the coastal areas because already they are saturated with the water. Too much of the water content is there. And also because this water is creating flooding, it also is the reason of salinization of this area. Okay. Due to salinization, number one, we have seen the floods are common. Second is salinization is there. Because of salinization, what happens is especially the agriculture potential of this area is impacted very hard. And due to they are rich in terms of agricultural productivity. Why? Because of, let's say, this is the region of river. River is known for what? The rich sediments. And therefore what happens is their agricultural productivity is hard, let's say, impacted hardly. Okay. Now come back to this flooding. So because of this sea level rise, what happens is often flooding occurs. And according to one estimate, the Pacific is rising in terms of sea level. I'm talking about 4 to 4.5 mm per year. And it is the fastest rise of the sea level in the especially western side of the Pacific Ocean. Now, because of that, what is happening? There are certain islands, especially if I take the example Guam Island. So because of this rise in, let's say, sea level, this Guam Island is, let's say, is experiencing frequent floodings. Their, let's say, flooding events have increased, let's say, more than twice, and it is reaching to more than 20 times also, year on year basis. So number one, flooding events have increased. You can put in the example of Guam Island. You can talk about the rise of sea level in the Pacific Ocean. This is one example. Second example is, if I talk about displacement, the societies are getting displaced. And again, I can take the example of Vanuatu. So in Vanuatu, they are making the plan of relocation because many of their area and the land is getting submerged. And if you remember that some 2 or 3 years back, so if you are aware, some 2 to 3 years back, you might have heard this news that Indonesia is also shifting its capital from Jakarta to Nusantara. Why? Because again, there was the fear and actually it was submerging. Okay? This Jakarta was submerging. And there is fear that by 2050, that may submerge completely. And therefore, they have also shifted their capital. So this is the another example you can talk about. Then some more examples are there. For example, there is in Tuvalu, the migration is going on. Because of this migration is often termed as climatic-based migration. The new migrants are termed as climatic migrants. So this migration is going on. The coastal communities, especially, they are relocating themselves. That is happening. Then you can also take the example that land erosion is going on. Because of land erosion, what is happening? One example I'm taking here, Kiribati. So Kiribati has lost 2 of its islands completely. They are submerged under the oceanic water. So in that way, they are losing. And one more example, if I take about this, let's say losing of the land, there is one more island, that is Solomon Island. It is also losing its islands faster. So these all the examples you can put in there. Then Vanuatu is the one very famous, let's say, example. Here, they are not only losing their land, but also they are seeing the let's say the climatic migration. The coastal communities are getting relocated, and this is going on. So in that way, you can talk about the climate change, its impact in terms of the sea level rising, and then you can say how the island nations are going to be impacted or are getting impacted. Okay. Now see here, one more thing. Not only this, let's say the agriculture, their food security, their land is getting submerged, their water sources or the fresh water availability is under threat. Forced migration is going on. They are losing their coastal, let's say, cohesion in the societies. The distrust is developing there. Especially the women are most impacted here. Why? If I give you some examples in, let's say, countries like Bangladesh, where the floods occur. I'm not taking island country here. Bangladesh I'm talking about. What happens is, due to social norms, because of what women wear there, it becomes very difficult for them to swim in such events of floods. Okay? So social norms are there. Then in the Fiji, what happened is, there was a flood incident because of, again, sea level rise. You can consider a storm surge was there. And then what happened is, the Fiji women, they experience high incidents of violence. So this happens in cases of such disasters. Often women receive the extremities. They are, at the other hand, they are subjected to violence, both physical as well as sexual violence. And because of their inability to cope up, especially under certain, let's say, special social norms, as I mentioned in the Bangladesh. So what happens is, they become very much vulnerable. We have seen this example, especially in this Fiji, in Bangladesh, in Tuvalu, where women also had lost the interest to come back again into the market and sell their products. Then their fishing patterns, the, let's say, tourism, everything will be affected. Okay. So this is one question. The second question is, what are tsunamis and how they are formed? What are their consequences? Explain with examples. So first you have to discuss what is tsunami. So what is tsunami? They are the high waves or long duration waves. They can bring in huge amount of water mass with them. And because of this water mass, they have the potential to create floods. Along with that, they can cause a worst hit to the entire infrastructure of the coastal area. We have seen that happened in case of 2004 tsunami in Indian Ocean. We have seen, especially in this 14 countries I'm talking about, we lost around 2.3 lakh people in that tsunami. So this happened. And now see here, the ones you have mentioned what are tsunamis, then you are supposed to say why they are formed. So how and why they are formed? So tsunamis are formed due to several reasons. Let's say, see here. Tsunamis are formed. Number one, it is generally they are formed at the zones of subduction. What is the zone of subduction? Where one plate undergoes the other. Let's say this is the other continental plate. One is going oceanic plate. So what happens is often in the zone of subduction, because of what? Because of the earthquake, this type of tsunamis are generated. So please remember, tsunamis are associated with the earthquakes. They are coupled with the earthquake. Especially underwater earthquake will result into tsunami generation. Second is, for example, if there is, let's say some landslide is occurring inside the oceans, where the land part is falling down inside the ocean, that can displace. So for example, the submarine landslide. So in case of submarine landslides, the land will fall down inside the ocean, and because of that, water mass will be displaced. Huge water mass will be displaced, and this may cause the generation of tsunami. Then there is another phenomena, that is in the times of, let's say, meteoritic hits. It was then very common. So meteoritic hits were also creating the tsunami. And then they are closely, because they are related with the subduction, you can also say at the volcanic eruptions, especially I'm talking about inside the oceans. If there are volcanic eruptions, nothing but we are talking about subduction only. In that cases of volcanic eruption, again, what will happen? The tsunamis can be generated. So tsunamis are generated because of what? Because of the intense release of energy inside the oceans. And then what happens is the huge wall of water along with huge mass of the water will come towards the coastal areas, and that will cause a lot of loss and destruction. So that you have talked about. What is tsunami? You have written how and where they are formed. You can say in that way, and you can also mark the area. If you are aware about that Pacific Ring of Fire, where it is the Pacific Ocean which is subducting in all the directions. So what you can say, you can make a diagram of especially Pacific Ring of Fire, marking the location of Pacific Ring of Fire. You can also say this is the zone of subduction. Okay, and in that zone of subduction, tsunamis are very common. And most of the tsunamis you may have seen, they are occurring in this zone of Pacific Ring of Fire. Now you can put in the next dimension. What are their consequences? So this is very simple part. What are the consequences? They cause a lot of loss of infrastructure. You can give the example of, let's say, Indian Ocean tsunami of 2004, Japan tsunami of 2011, where a lot of infrastructure, the power lines, the communication lines, road network, they were hit very hard. Okay, so that is in case of, let's say, the tsunamis, it is very common. Second is the other consequences. For example, flood will be there. For example, salination of that area will occur, and the fresh water availability will be again reduced. The coastal economies will be impacted worst. Okay, they will lose their, let's say, the economic sources. For example, what are their economic sources? Let's say fishing, that will be over. Then tourism activities, that is also going to be impacted. Often the coastal areas are heavily invested in terms of infrastructure. For example, you will see the ports and other connection with the ports, for example, rail and road networks. So they all are going to be impacted. Then you can also write about the ecological loss. Ecological loss, especially the coastal areas, will see the loss of, in terms of ecology. We have seen the mangroves covers are there, the forests are there. So you will lose this mangroves and forests because of this events. Okay. Coastal economies are affected. Then coastal social practices are also affected as well. For example, their burial practices, due to the submergence of the area, their burial practices, ancient burial practices are continuously changing. Especially I'm talking about this island nations that we talked about in the previous question. Okay, so this is how they create social impacts also. Then now, what is the another one? Explain with the examples. So we have so many examples. For example, you can talk about the Sumatra tsunami of 2004 in Indian Ocean that accounted for 2.3 lakh deaths. Okay. Then there was another tsunami because of, again, the earthquake underwater. Then this was in Java, again the subduction zone. You can talk about that one. Then you can talk about the more recent in 2022 near Tonga Trench. There was underwater earthquake activity, and due to that there was tsunami generation. Then very recently, because of that, this question was very much expected. Near Russia and Kamchatka Plateau in 2025, there was a tsunami. Okay, so in that way, you can give the examples and conclude your question. Done? Yes. The last question, it is about discuss how the changes in shape and size of continents and ocean basins of the planet take place due to tectonic movement of the crustal masses. Okay, so this question is directly from plate tectonic theory. In that you can mention, let's say about something about plate tectonic. So what you can mention is, what is plate tectonic? So you can say the shape and size of the continents and oceans is continuously changing due to the plate tectonic. That is, the lithospheric slabs, which are solid and brittle, they floats over or slide and glide over the semi-molten asthenosphere. Okay, because of they are gliding and sliding over the semi-molten asthenosphere, so they create a lot of outcome and effects, especially changing the shape and size of the land and continents. Now you can start your question. Let's say this is the plate tectonic. In this plate tectonic, you might be aware that it can be the convergence of two plates. Okay, convergence of the two plates. Second, it is divergence of the two plates. And third is transform boundary. Now, when it is convergence, the convergence occurs when the two plates will come close to each other. What is divergence? When the two plates move in opposite direction. What is transform? In transform, the two land areas are just passing themselves, means each other, in lateral manner, sliding past each other. Now see here, in convergence, we have certain examples. For example, that is, if the two oceanic plates are converging, one oceanic, one continental plate is converging, and two continental plates are converging. Now you can take this one first, ONC convergence, and you can say, due to this ONC convergence, what happens is often the oceanic plates will go down under the continental plates, which results into what? Which results into the shortening of what? Subduction of the oceanic slab. So what happens is the oceans are becoming shorter. Okay, oceans become shorter. Example, you can give the example of Pacific Ocean. So Pacific Ocean is subducting almost in all the directions, and therefore it is reducing in size. So in that way, you can talk about, the question is talking about how the shape and size of the oceans and land is changing. So in that way, the size of the ocean, which ocean? Pacific Ocean, is continuously changing. In the same way, O and O, let's say collision, if it occurs, so what happens is both the plates are denser. So one which is more denser will go under the another. It will bring in the volcanic activity and the formation of volcanic island. You can talk about here the Philippines, the Japan. They are nothing but made up of this type of collision. So this is how the land masses will emerge due to this, let's say, plate tectonic. Okay, so this is the another example. Here you can say C and C collision. In case of C and C collision, you can talk about when the two continental plates will collide. What happens is, because they two are buoyant, because they two are, means both of them are lighter, and hence none of them will go down. So what happens is, due to such collision, generally what happens is there will be no subduction, but there will be mountain formation and shortening of crust. So due to this shortening of crust and mountain building, you can talk about how the Indian peninsula in the past, this came and collided with the Eurasia, okay, Eurasian plate. And it also resulted into what? The closing of Tethys Sea. So again, you are hitting the question, the shape and size of the ocean. Tethys Sea got completely subducted, whereas the new shape of India emerged, where the Himalayas were formed. And this is the new shape now of India. You can put in this, okay. So Himalayas are here, and then the new shape of India acquired a new shape. Okay, so this is you can talk about here. Then you can talk about divergence. Now in the case of divergence, what will happen? In the divergence, the two land masses will be deflected in the opposite direction. Or let's say two oceanic plates can also be deflected into the different direction. Generally, it is very common in case of ocean. You may have seen the MORs are here. Now, in such cases, when the divergence is going on, generally you will see the oceans will expand. Example you can put in here, the Atlantic MOR. The classic example, Atlantic is widening because of, let's say, this MOR area. The another example you can put in here, the Great African East Rift Valley. Because of that Rift Valley, what is happening? The Africa from beneath, due to this magma's convection, it is also expanding. So that is how the Africa may change in terms of its shape in the future because of this underneath volcanic eruption and the divergence. Because of this divergence, also Red Sea is continuously expanding. So you have given certain examples, example of Red Sea, example of Atlantic, example of the African Rift Valley. In that way, you can talk about this one also. The third one you can talk about, when the two land masses are sliding and gliding past each other, they will be relocated in the future, and that will shape them in the new realities. So in that way, you can talk about in this question. With the help of so many examples, we have seen this question. Okay. I hope these questions were simple, especially after this discussion. You may be aware now how you could have written this answers. Okay. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the discussion for GS1 Mains 2025. I hope all the candidates would have answered the questions as per the demand of the questions. The questions were mostly, if I see for the GS1, if I talk about Indian geography and human and economic geography, the questions were mostly on the side of static portion. So the people who would have done their foundation and their NCERTs properly, I believe for them to handle these questions would have been easier. Okay. So let us see this question. Though the topic population is under society, but if you read NCERT geography, you see they will also teach you population. So in order to have a comprehensive understanding of the topic of population, you need to first create your base from the perspective of geography, and then on that you can build up the whole topic through the prism of society. So this question here, you see, this question has been asked explicitly demanding the role of land, soil and water. Okay, so let us see this question. So we know this is a 15 marker question. So let me give you a hint first, and then I will elaborate on the various aspects. If this is a 15 marker question, what is the demand? So first, introduction. In introduction, I will use 2 paragraphs here. First, I will say that the distribution and density of population are governed by both geographical factors such as climate, soil, water, relief, availability of minerals, as well as non-geographical factors such as industrialization, urbanization, mining activities, and cultural factors. So once I have talked about the population and density, because it is a 15 marker question, I have given him a hint. Okay. Next, what we will talk about, the Ganga river basin. Remember, here the question is not talking about the Gangetic plains. Here it is talking about Ganga river basin. So all the tributaries that it incorporates, all of them will be included. So here the Ganga river basin encompasses 11 states. And here I can write some UP, Bihar, Uttarakhand, MP, okay, West Bengal. That sustains close to 43% of the India population, which is equals to 520 million or 550 million as per the census 2011. So I'm using the data from census 2011. Okay. And here I can write that the basin's average density stands close to between 500 and 600 persons per kilometer square, which is much higher than the average density, which is equal to 382 persons per kilometer square. So these are the data that I have fed in my introduction. Okay, first I have talked about the factors, then I have talked about this. This once done. Once I have completed till here, then I will talk about I will give heading population and density of distribution and density of population. Okay, this is the heading in the Ganga river basin. So once I have talked about this, so here what I will do, let me talk here. I will talk about, draw the diagram in brief. Here I will depict the Ganga river basin, Uttarakhand. This is how the Ganga is flowing. I will depict some of the major rivers, Yamuna, Chambal, okay. So this is the Ganga river basin. This needs to be divided into 4 regions. First, I will divide upper Ganga reaches. So here I will talk about upper Ganga reaches. Then I will talk about the upper Ganga basin, middle Ganga basin, lower Ganga basin. Okay. So let us come to body. If I am talking about body, so this is basically, so here what I am dividing this into first upper Ganga reaches. I am talking about the upper Ganga plain. I am talking about the middle Ganga plain. And okay. And middle Ganga plain, and I'm talking about lower Ganga plain. So now under the topic distribution and density of population, I am creating sub 4 topics. Upper Ganga plain, this. Now once I have drawn this, now I will give heading upper Ganga plain. Here I will talk. It includes the hilly regions of Uttarakhand. It is very sparsely populated because there is no fertile agricultural plains. Okay. Then rough rocky terrain and prone to disasters such as landslides. So the population density in this region you will see is less than 10 kilometer square person per square. But there are some regions which are population is heavily concentrated, which are in the valleys such as Dehradun Valley. Done. Okay. Next we will talk about upper Ganga plains. First, upper Ganga plain include western UP, mostly the Ganga Yamuna Doab, Rohilkhand plain, Awadh plain. Okay, it is semi-arid in nature. And thus here you see, this is, I can say, moderately populated. This zone is moderately populated. The average density, population density of UP is 828 per kilometer square, persons per kilometer square. Here the density is less than the average density. Okay. Once you have talked about these aspects, mostly here population is because of the green revolution areas, fertile plains. Now come to middle Gangetic plains. Middle Gangetic plains includes eastern UP plus Bihar. We know Bihar is one of the highest density, 1106 persons per kilometer square. Eastern UP, it is close to the average, that is 828 persons per kilometer square. This is heavily populated because of the presence of fertile alluvial lands, numerous rivers you see, Gandak, Ghagra, Punpun, Son. Okay, and then come to lower Gangetic plains. Here 1029 persons per kilometer square, this whole zone. There are high density regions such as Kolkata. Here also you could have talked about the regions such as Varanasi, Patna, Gaya, Rohtas. These are highly populated regions, okay, within the middle Gangetic plains. Here you see the population density is high because of presence of fertile agricultural plain plus migration of people from the East Pakistan after partition plus greater illegal migration from Bangladesh. All these peoples have settled down in the lower Gangetic plains because highly fertile. And we know 3 types of rice are grown here, all 3 seasons, Aman, Boro, Os. So once we have defined these aspects, then now we talk about with spatial reference to, okay, so you see here what we did. We gave the introduction, okay, then data, then I drew the diagram, and then I have talked about 4 pillars. These are the 4 subheadings. Now I will talk about the role of land in influencing distribution. Here what I can do, here I can see this is Shivalik. This is Bhabhar zone. Here I can talk about Bhabhar, role of land, Bhabhar. Okay. Here I can talk this land as Tarai. This is Bhangar. This is Khadar. We know Bhabhar, it is stone-studded region where river disappears and flows under streams. No agriculture possible. So mostly used by Gujjars. Gujjars for herding their cattle. Now come to Terai. Swampy and marshy region. Rivers reappear. As a result, what happens? Intensive cultivation of sugarcane, rice and jute are grown. So this is moderately to high populated region. It is distributed between India and Nepal. Now come to Bhangar. Bhangar is a zone which is old alluvium which does not get flooded anymore. As a result, numerous settlements have developed in this zone. All high populous density zones such as Patna, Rohtas, Gaya, all are located in the Bhangar zone. Okay. Once you have talked about all this, then you see. Now you talk about Khadar. In Khadar, you will talk it is new alluvium which gets flooded every year. So here you see, because of the rise in population, the population has encroached even in these regions. Okay. So nearby regions, the population will be not as high as compared to the Bhangar zone. But even in these regions, now we are witnessing development of human settlements. So role of land is over. Under 4 pillars. Again, here you see. Again, I have used 4 pillars for this. More pillar I use, I get more content, I get more marks. Okay, done. Now come to 3rd page. In 3rd page, I will talk about the role of soil. We know it is extensive presence of alluvial soil. Here I can talk about this. Here there is calcareous soils. Okay, conchers, present of conchers. Here there is, okay, new alluvium. Every year fertility is renewed. But we know because of these rich extensive soils, the population density is very high. Land utilization is dominated by agriculture, which is close to 60 to 65%. Okay. And on these lines, you will talk about how the cultivation of rice, sugarcane, pulses, maize, wheat, okay, sustain high density rural settlements, which can exceed even 1,000 persons per kilometer square. And these regions, Bhangar zone, this also encourages development of urban regions, okay, such as Patna, Varanasi, where population density is very high because of urbanization. Then we talk about the role of water resources. In the question of water resources, I need to break it down. Water resources need to be broken down under 3 pillars. One is surface water. One is groundwater. And next is floods and droughts. Here you see surface water. Okay, here I can draw a map if time permits, depicting the various rivers, Ghagra, Gandak, Kosi, Punpun, Yamuna, Chambal, all these rivers. And I can talk about the basin accounts for 29% of the India's surface water. So here I can talk 29% of the India's total surface water resources. And thus what it has done, the population densities are very high, especially along the canal regions. Upper Ganga Canal, Kosi Canal, Gandak Canal. This has further facilitated the development of rural settlements by taming the rivers. Okay, once we have talked about this, and here you can also talk why the surface water ensures agriculture, drinking water, and development of industries. So all these aspects you need to talk. Groundwater reservoir. In groundwater, you see, you can talk about it contributes 40% of the India's replenishable groundwater, mostly because alluvial soils have higher porosity and permeability. As a result, the rural settlements as well as urban settlements have proliferated. Floods and droughts. Here you see Western UP is semi-arid and prone to drought. And thus what we see, the population density here is generally on the moderate side because the rural people have migrated to urban areas in search of better employment opportunities. Okay, and floods. Though floods must discourage, but here floods prone regions too witnesses higher population density because of presence of agricultural fertile plains. But they witnesses seasonal displacement of people, which in turn temporarily changes the distribution of population in the flood-prone regions. Okay. So once we have talked about this, then in conclusion, you can talk that climate change is changing the flow of pattern of the rivers and are increasing the incidences of floods and droughts. And thus, government, in order to sustain the high density population, should work upon monsoon proofing of agriculture, fulfilling the commitments under INDC targets, as well as increasing the contraception usage in high fertility districts under Mission Parivar Vikas to reduce the fertility rates towards replacement level fertility. This is the conclusion that I could have done. Being a futuristic conclusion, I am bringing both natural as well as man-made contraception usage, as well as monsoon proofing of agriculture and INDC commitments. Okay, so this is how you could have written the answers. So now we shift towards human and economic geography. The first question is, what are non-farm primary activities? How are these activities related to physiographic features in India? Discuss with suitable examples. So here, first we need to define non-farm primary activities are those activities within the primary sector which does not involve cultivation of crops. Done. Next, I will type types of non-primary activities. I can talk about forestry. I can talk about fishing. I can talk about mining and quarrying. I can talk about animal husbandry. I can talk about apiculture. I can talk about sericulture. Once we have discussed this part of the question done, very easy. They have already asked a question in the year 2019 or 2020 as, what do you understand by integrated farming? Where we integrate agriculture with non-allied activities. But here they have changed the different lingua. Okay. Once we have done, then we can talk about that India has been divided into 5 physiographic divisions. Okay. Bracket, mountains, plains, plateaus and hills, coastal plains and island states. And they heavily influences the non-primary activities. Done. Then we talk about first forestry. Here I can quickly draw the map of India. Once I have drawn, I can quickly depict the mountainous zones: Greater Himalayas, Shivalik, okay, Western Ghats, Vindhyas, Satpura, Aravalis, Eastern Ghats, Purvanchal zones. Here we know high density of forest: Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, okay, Madhya Pradesh, Central Highland region, one of the states with the highest forest cover. I can give the examples name here: mahogany, ebony, rosewood. Here I can talk about teak, sal, sisam. Here I can talk about juniper, spruce, pine. Okay, and I can talk about that here, that agroforestry is also prominent, and agroforestry is done in all mostly physiographic divisions. As per the Indian State of Forest Report, Maharashtra and Karnataka are the leading states in the agroforestry. Once I have talked about forestry, second I quickly talk about fishing. Fishing, total production of fishing in India is close to 18 metric million tons. So now this has to be divided under marine fishing. This has to be divided under inland fishing. Inland fishing is close to marine fishing close to 4.5 million tons. This is close to 13.5 million tons. This has to be divided under two. Here I can talk about western coast and eastern coast. So the coastal regions here, the coastal physiographic division: Gujarat, Maharashtra, Kerala, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal. Some of the leading producers. Okay. Here we know Andhra Pradesh is the leading producer, that is close to 35% of the total output. So here you could have talked fishing plus aquaculture. It includes aquaculture, brackish water aquaculture, every aspect. Okay, done. Third, we will talk about animal husbandry. Animal husbandry has to be broken down under three pillars. That is cattle. Okay. Second, we talk about here is goats plus sheep plus camel. This is mostly done under Indo-Gangetic Plains region, and poultry. Cattle, we know Punjab, UP, Haryana, Bihar. This is mostly on the semi-arid regions such as Gujarat, Rajasthan, MP. And poultry, we know Andhra Pradesh is the leading producer. Okay, so these plains, because of the presence of pasture lands. Remember, plains because of presence of pasture lands. Fourth, mining and quarrying. It is mostly done in the hilly regions plus plateaus. So here I can talk, here I can again draw a diagram. I can make Aravalis, Vindhyas, Western Ghats, Chota Nagpur Plateau. In Chota Nagpur Plateau, I can talk about mining of iron ore, coal, uranium, copper. Eastern Ghats, I know Odisha. Odisha is famous for iron ore in the Mayurbhanj and Keonjhar district. Here I can talk about bauxite. Bauxite, the famous Kalahandi, Bolangir and Koraput district. Here we know it is famous for quarrying of sandstone and limestone. Here we know Western Ghats, Goa famous for iron ore mining. Kolhapur region famous for bauxite mining. and Chitradurg, Karnataka, famous for iron ore mining. Here we know mining of copper, Jhunjhunu, Khetri, mining of lead and zinc, that is Zarawar mines, mining of silver. This is I can talk. Fifth I can talk about here is apiculture. Apiculture means cultivation of bees. So mostly those regions which will have rich flora, like you see Jammu Kashmir, Uttarakhand, Punjab, the Shivaliks and the foothills of Himalayan mountains. Sixth we will talk about here is sericulture. Sericulture means cultivation of mulberry. So those areas where mulberry tree can be grown easily, that is the Deccan Lava Plateau. So Karnataka is one of the leading producers. So with this, how to conclude? We will conclude that in the face of climate change, supplementation of income of farmers needs to be promoted by efficiently implementing National Livestock Mission, Rashtriya Gokul Mission, Pradhan Mantri Sampada Yojana and National Agroforestry Policy 2040. As a bureaucratic mindset, we need to have a progressive conclusion where we ask the examiner to efficiently implement some of the government schemes. So moving to the next question. Explain briefly the ecological and the economic benefits of solar energy generation in India with suitable examples. So here you see, first we need to say that solar energy generation ensures sustainable development along with economic development as well as environmental conservation. Full stop. As per the recent data given by Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, the total cumulative installed capacity stands at 119 gigawatt. Without data, no question. Without examples, no question. Without case studies, no question. Demand of geography, no diagram, no question. Okay, once I have talked about this, then what I can do, I can quickly draw the diagram. Key cumulative installed capacity in India. Okay, we know here Rajasthan stands at the top. Gujarat stands as the second. Here you 28 gigawatt, close to 19 gigawatt. Okay. Next we see Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu. Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu. If we see Maharashtra also stands close to 11 gigawatt and this stands close to 10.5 gigawatt. Then we have some of the major solar power plants. Gujarat, we have Bhadla. Okay. Bhadra, yes, Bhadla. Here you see Riva, mega solar power plant. Tamil Nadu, Kumuthi, mega solar power plant. Karnataka, Pavagada. So in diagram, I have given the data as well as I have given some of the major plants. Now I will talk about ecological benefits. In ecological benefits, this need to be divided under three. First, can I say reduction in emission of greenhouse gases. I will give case study. Bhadla solar power plant. It is area of coverage 6,000 hectares. Power output 2.5 gigawatt. And it saves 4 million tons of CO2 annually. Done. They are saying with examples. Example. Second, conservation of water resources. Here you see, for generation of electricity from thermal power plant, we require water. But usage of solar energy in arid and semi-arid regions such as Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan can save enormous quantities of water. Okay. Third, we will talk reduction in air pollution. Reduction in air pollution, that is SOx, NOx, PM10, PM2.5, especially in the cities or in the states where coal mining is dominating because of thermal power generation. That is, I can talk about the cities of Ranchi, cities of Chhattisgarh. Here there will be reduction in coal air pollution. Okay. Once we have talked about the ecological benefits, I can also talk about more if I have. Here I can talk about reduction in water contamination. Reduction in water contamination. We know because of the mining, rivers such as Damodar and Kopili have been heavily polluted because of the chemical blasting in the mines, chemical contamination. So this can further lead. Then reduction in deforestation. For mining, we know we need to uproot the trees, but here solar energy are generally being developed on wasteland areas. So neither it is encroaching into the forest land, nor it is expanding into the fertile agricultural tracts. Rather, it is what they are doing. They are using the wastelands, which has been rendered unproductive because of the either natural or man-made reasons. Done. Now let us talk about the economic benefits. Can I say first, reduction in import of crude oil and liquefied LNG. So hereby basically what happens? We save foreign exchange earning. And thus what happens? Current account deficit remains stable. So here you can give a data that in last year, India has saved, in 2024, India has saved close to $5 billion by curbing the import of crude oil and LNG because of solar energy. Second, we can talk about employment generation. Because of the development of either maintenance of the plants or the construction of the plants. So case study, Bhadla solar power plant, Rajasthan has created more than 10,000 employment opportunities. And if we see Riva, ultra mega solar plant, which is 750 megawatt, has become a regional employment hub. And finally, I can talk about costs affordability. In affordability, I can talk about both consumers as well as I can talk about farmers. Here, Pradhan Mantri Har Ghar Bijli Yojana and rooftop solar program. These two are enabling the consumers to establish solar power plants and thus do reduction in the electricity consumption, that is cost. And farmers, I can talk about how Pradhan Mantri Kusum is enabling farmers not just to use solar energy, rather also sell solar energy to the grid and can supplement the incomes of the farmers. So 5 plus 3, 8 bullet. We have already drawn a diagram, introduction given, data given. We have sufficed the demand of the question. Now what we can do? Conclusion. In conclusion, you can write that in the era of rising geopolitical turns and energy insecurity, India needs to develop indigenous manufacturing of solar modules and boost international cooperation and research through International Solar Alliance. Okay, this is how I can, or you can talk about key boosting of solar manufacturing under PLI scheme and forcing greater adoption under National Solar Mission and international cooperation in research under International Solar Alliance. Okay. Then we move to the next question is, how can artificial intelligence and drones be effectively used along with GIS and RS techniques in locational and aerial planning? So aerial, remember here aerial means space. Okay. So this question needs to be, first we need to define that. We can say that GIS, which is Geographic Information System, Geographic Information System, and RS, which is Remote Sensing, are two interrelated technologies which are used to analyze and manage spatial and geographic data. So this is the introduction I could give. Once I have given the data introduction, then I will give what is GIS. Let us first talk GIS in the paper. Geographic Information System captures, stores, manages, and analyzes spatial data by integrating geographical attributes such as map, coordinates with its characteristics. Okay, example you can give: grass GIS, QGIS, ArcGIS. These are softwares. Okay, once I have talked about this, so you see then I will talk about next is remote sensing. Remote sensing is a practice of collecting data of the earth without coming in contact with each other, that is through satellites or drones. Here they basically use passive radars, passive sensors, or active radars for GIS. In active radars, you would have read under this LIDAR, radar, everything. Once I have talked about this, then what I will talk, once I have defined GIS, once I have defined remote sensing, now let us begin the how artificial. Then I can begin in recent times, disruptive technologies such as artificial intelligence and drones have been increasingly integrated with GIS and RS techniques in locational and aerial planning. So first we say is urban planning. In urban planning, you see what it can do. Here it can do is smart city planning. It can be used for smart city planning. Here I can give case study of Surat smart city. Here what it was that AI plus remote sensing was used in managing solid waste management, plus traffic management. Okay. Second, I can talk, we can plan transit-oriented development policy, TOD. Okay. Third, we can draw that plan for urban sprawl, which is happening in the urban areas. Okay. So here you see, you can give a case study of Bengaluru, where you see LIDAR plus AI plus GIS was used to map heat islands, heat hotspots in the Bengaluru zone. So here I have given two case studies. One is smart city, Surat smart city, and one is Bengaluru planning under urban planning. Once we have done urban planning, second we can talk about here is disaster management. We know right now that incidences such as mini cloudburst have increased. Such as example right now, Jammu Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh. So what we can do, usage of artificial intelligence plus drones plus remote sensing, we can do weather prediction. Here, we can analyze artificial intelligence plus GIS in glacial lake outburst flood, that is glacial lakes, the sizes and shapes of glacial lakes. Then slope stability for analyzing or arresting landslides. Okay, here. Then floods. Here you can give case study of Amsterdam. What was they did? They used GIS plus artificial intelligence plus remote sensing in flood zonation mapping. You can give another example. Recently, ISRO has used remote sensing, okay, and drones in delineating the Brahmaputra flood zones in the Assam state. So disaster management is over. Third we can talk about is transportation. Here in brief I can explain TOD policy based on drones and remote sensing. Drones plus remote sensing, we can understand the areas of high density zones in the urban areas, and accordingly we can plan the transit oriented routes. Okay, one such example here is that in the Delhi NCR region, this technique was used to develop Dwarka Expressway. Then I can talk about next, development of transport arteries in hilly regions. Okay, especially for laying down the railway lines as well as laying down of roadways. Okay, once we have talked about this, then we talk about fourth is agriculture. In agriculture, we can analyze artificial intelligence plus remote sensing plus GIS. We can analyze laying down of canals. We can understand the depletion of groundwater. We can understand soil health, that is understanding its moisture and nutrient content. We can arrest drought-like conditions in agriculture. Then, to provide compensation under Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, we can use drones plus GIS, okay, plus remote sensing in assessing the damage. Next we can talk about fifth, forest cover. It is being used by Indian state, okay, in Indian State of Forest report to analyze the forest cover of India. Then we can say that we can assess the chlorophyll content, and thus what we can say, we can understand the loss of evapotranspiration or evapotranspiration rates. So now what we can do, by assessing this, we can manage forest fires. Like you see, in Los Angeles forest fires, drones plus remote sensing was used to assess the changing pattern or the extent of the forest fires. Fifth, next I can talk about is resource management. In resource management, you see, I can talk about mapping of oil reserves, mapping of critical minerals, seventh, here I can talk about here is mapping of underdeveloped regions. Okay, here you see, we know Manrega. Under Manrega, we are developing durable assets. So with the usage of GIS plus drones, we can assess the durability, and based on which the funds can be transferred through direct benefit transfer. In this, what we can also check corruption in the aerial planning zones. Okay. Next, what we can talk about here is 8th, desert. We can arrest desertification, those areas or the which are losing the top layers of the soil are losing fertility. As a result, they are not able to provide ecosystem services. The remote sensing and the drones plus AI can be utilized to predict the extent. 9th, I can talk about oil spillage. AI-based models can be used, AI plus GIS models can be used to predict the extent of the oil spillage as well as the future areas where this oil spillage will cover. So here you can talk about in India government needs to skill the people in the fields of GIS, artificial intelligence. Okay. And in 10, you could also say climate change, that is release of greenhouse gases. And so these can be used to create inventories and data sets which can capture the amount of greenhouse gases and the INDC commitments of India. So total 10 bullets I could have written under this. This is nothing but geography. If you would have really understood what is geography, what is spatial planning, the word here is planning. 11th, you could have written watershed management, that is Ganga, National Mission for Clean Ganga, that is Namami Gange program. Here we can, through basis of drones and GIS, we can assess which are the regions in the rivers which are still polluted or have higher levels of coliform or iron or arsenic. Okay. So this is how you are supposed to write. Moving to the next question. Give a geographical explanation of the distribution of offshore oil reserves of the world. So first we will talk about petroleum, that is oil, are formed when marine or organic organisms are buried deep beneath these in the continents. Okay. And are trapped beneath the impermeable layer. So once I can give in the introduction petroleum, I can talk formation. It is formed under 5 stages. Oil. And then I will begin the demand of the question. First, deposition of marine organic organisms. Here I will call sedimentation, where the organic organisms are converted into kerogen. This third step is known as window oil. Here kerogen is converted under high pressure and heat into oil. Fourth stage, what happens since oil and natural gas are lighter than water, they begin to travel upward through porous rocks such as sandstone and limestone. And finally, they are trapped or stored in the anticlines, fault traps, or reservoir rocks. Once I have talked about this, I can quickly draw a diagram of anticline. This is reservoir rock. This is gas. This is impermeable layer. This is oil. This is water. I can talk in brief. How? Once I have talked about this, then I will say that. Now I will talk about distribution of offshore oil reserves. Here you see. Here I will talk like that the distribution of offshore oil reserves are based on continental margins, sedimentary basins, deltaic deposits, plus tectonic activities. 30% of the total production of the oil in the world comes from offshore oil reserves. Once I have talked about this, then I will quickly draw a world map. And I will depict the major oil producing regions in the world. Offshore oil producing regions. Here you see. First major oil producing reserve, Gulf, then Guinea, North Sea, Caribbean Sea, that is Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean Sea, South China Sea, Bering Sea. These are some of the major soil oil producing regions. Okay, so now what we will do, we'll pick up one by one. Because it is a 15-marker question, first we'll pick up Persian Gulf region. Okay. In Persian Gulf, you see, what is there? In Persian Gulf, it is located in shallow continental shelf, the oil. And you will write the country, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Qatar, Bahrain. Okay. Here it is shallow continental shelf with extensive sedimentary basins. Extensive sedimentary basins. Okay. Next, Gulf of Guinea. Gulf of Guinea, you write Nigeria, Guinea. Here the oil reserves are located in deltaic sediments and are deep water reserves. Okay. Here, North Sea. We know the type of crude oil found here is known as Brent crude. Okay. In North Sea, you will talk about it is located in the continental shelf where the oil has been developed during the Cretaceous and the Jurassic period. Okay. Next we talk about here is, similarly we'll keep talking as many regions. Gulf of Mexico. In Gulf of Mexico, you write here USA, and USA is one of the largest producers. And here you see what is, it is the reservoirs are deep water and ultra water reservoirs. Here you can talk about here is this basin, Santos Basin of Brazil, and the Orinoco Basin of Venezuela. Venezuela has one of the largest reserves in the world. Okay. And finally here, tectonically active margins. We know Philippines is formed near a trench. Okay. And it has rich hydrocarbon potential. And finally, here is Karat Sea. Okay. There are numerous sea, Kara Sea, Barents Sea, all here reserves. So this is how you were supposed to talk. Once we have talked about this, then we are moving to the next question. In next question, I could have drawn a table depicting as the parameter. It is offshore. It is onshore. First parameter, location. Here, in this location, you see, you can talk about it is beneath continental shelf and seabeds. It is found in the sedimentary basin. On the land. Sedimentary basin on the continents. It is continental shelf, deltaic deposits, and seabeds. Third, I can talk about extraction. Here, extraction is difficult and dangerous, and thus the exploration and production companies are paid higher royalty. Okay. So here you have to create offshore platforms which are known as rigs. Okay. Here land rigs are easy to create as to access the deep underwater reservoir rocks. Next, here we can talk about next parameter, cost of production. Here cost of production is high and thus they are paid higher. Here cost of production is low. More than this, what we can talk about next is environmental risk. Environmental risk, here you see, there are various risks that such as tsunami, tropical cyclones, as well as collapse of the seabed. As a result, you see, it is more dangerous. And you can give example of deep water horizon accident in the Gulf of Mexico. Environmental risk here is relatively low, but here it can lead to contamination of water aquifers and spillage, or we can talk about is soil contamination. Next we can talk about is reserve size. In reserve size, you see, it is increasingly significant, okay, but they are depleting at a faster rate. Onshore soils have yet not been exploited completely and thus can hold a greater reserves. Next we can talk about is geopolitical. Okay. In geopolitics, what we can say here, in offshore, the exploration can lead to maritime dispute, example Cyprus and Turkey. Okay. Or we can talk about presently the dispute between India and Pakistan over the Sar Creek. Onshore, there is no geopolitical tussle because the land boundaries are intactly maintained or demarcated. Once we have talked about all these aspects, then you can conclude on the lines that in the recent times, the help policy, you can talk it. Government has come up with hydrocarbon exploration and licensing policy. Government needs to increasingly explore the areas which have yet not been or which are yet untapped in order to ensure energy security and reduce the import bill of the oil and natural gas. Okay. So let us move to the next question. The last question. Achieving sustainable growth with emphasis on environmental protection could come into conflict with poor people's need in a country like India. The question is saying comment. It is a question which is at the interjunction of environment, society, human and economic geography. 3 topics. Okay. So here you see, we can write here that environmental protection or sustainable growth is a policy that needs to balance environmental conservation, economic development, environmental preservation, economic development, and social equity. This is what is sustainable growth or sustainable development. So next what we can write that in a country like India, where numerous poor and resource-dependent people are dependent on fragile ecosystems, developmental needs often comes in conflict with their livelihood, survival, and employment opportunities. So once I have explained this, let us see why conflict. Why conflict arises. You see, the question is say comment. So first we will say why conflict arises. I am commenting on the question. First, can I say? These are resource dependent populations. So what is happening? Destruction of resources. So here what is happening? Mining, construction or connectivity projects. What they do? Can I say it leads to deforestation, comma, chemical contamination of rivers, comma, soil degradation because of mining. As a result, what happens? Can I say non-timber forest produce? This declines. As a result, their destruction of resources and their livelihoods chances declines. Okay. Second, I can talk about is this development induced displacement. Here I can give two examples. Sardar Sarovar Dam. Numerous tribal peoples were displaced. And second I can give example is Machkund Dam of Odisha. As a result, what happens? These people were pushed into what I'm saying is Naxalism. Third I can talk about here is green projects. Third I can talk about here is green projects. In green projects, you see what we say. Do you know under Wildlife Protection Act 1972, in order to create inviolate core areas under tiger reserves, numerous traditional forest dwellers have been removed from their core areas. So for this, I can give a case study. Like here you see, this is Simlipal Tiger Reserve. This is Nagarhole Tiger Reserve. This is Sariska Tiger Reserve. This is Panna Tiger Reserve. Now you see name of the tribes that have been removed. Okay, let us see the name of the tribes. In the first tribes, if you see like Kanha, here is one is Kanha. Gond and Baiga tribes were removed. Gond and Baiga tribes. Okay. In Simlipal, if you see, this is Mankidia and Santhal. Mankidia, Santhal. Okay. Sariska Tiger Reserves, Gujjar pastoralists were removed. And no compensation were given, and thus they are still in conflict with the local government. Then you see in Panna Tiger Reserve, Pardhi families. Still no compensation to them. And finally, if you talk about here, Kuruba tribe. So these tribes have been displaced, yet what we see that their needs or compensation were not given. Third. Fourth, can I say delay in compensation, as there is no fixed time. Delay in compensation. Okay. Next, what we can talk about here is fifth point. In fifth point, we need to talk about is unequal policy costs. Okay. What am I trying to say here is unequal policy costs. Here you see the green developments such as clean water, biodiversity preservation, they all have long-term effects. And it is for the complete society. But the loss of land, employment opportunities are mostly witnessed by the local tribal people. Okay. And finally, sixth, what we can talk about is absence of just transition. Just transition, here I can talk about here is 4 million people are dependent on mining activities. So now if we are moving towards clean energy projects, and if these miners are not re-skilled and up-skilled in other employment opportunities, now this will create a huge conflict zone. Okay. So once we have seen, and one we can also talk about is industrial developments. More point you can write. Why these all are there? You can write weak governance. That is corruption in the forest bureaucracy. That is when the tribal people go to claim their land rights under Forest Rights Act 2006. The forest bureaucracy demands that you give me the land deeds or you satellite imageries. Okay. So now you see most of the educated people may not understand what are these. So now it is very difficult for the tribal people, okay, to bring these maps. Okay. Here you can give an example is Singrauli coal belt. Here what happens? Because of this, negative externalities develop. In the Singrauli coal belt region, soil degradation and soil pollution and water pollution has led to various epidemiological diseases in the tribal people. So now what we need to do? We need to say that though poverty in India is declining, but yet non-negligible poor people are dependent on forest resources, or that is fragile ecosystems. And thus a sustainable development is the need of the hour. So now we must give solutions. Solutions I will need first is participatory planning. That is incorporation of Gram Sabhas under the Forest Right Act 2006 and PESA Act 1996. The best example here is Kudremukh region. In Kudremukh region, the Forest Rights Act's implementation have ensured that minimal conflicts arises between the people. Next, I can talk about third is just transition and green jobs. Here what I'm trying to say here is that the people needs to be re-skilled and up-skilled in various other employment opportunities such as manufacturing of solar modules, manufacturing of wind turbines, okay, in order to ensure just transition. Next we can talk about is adequate and time-linked compensation to the displaced families. Okay. Next, what we can talk about is strengthening training of forest bureaucracy. That is ensuring more compassionate attitudes towards the tribal people. Okay. Next, we can talk about is payments for ecosystem services. Payments for ecosystem services. This means those tribal people which have ensured that the survival of the ecosystem remains, their stewardship must be awarded by the government by giving them more financial rewards in order to encourage them in greater protection. Okay. Next, what we can talk about here is strengthening institutions. That is strengthening institutions. That is forest bureaucracy, Gram Sabhas. Next I can talk about is incorporation of technology. That is GIS, remote sensing, drones, in effectively assessing the aerial planning during developmental areas as well as assessing the claims under the Forest Rights Act 2006. Once we have written this, in the conclusion we can write that no society can ever move ahead by neglecting the traditional forest dwellers, which are the hearts of traditional knowledges, ecological knowledges. And thus, sustainable development is the need of the hour where inclusive and participatory planning lies at the foundation of any policy making. So with this, you could have seen that the questions were far or more easily manageable if you have truly understood the basics of all these questions. Okay, none of the question, if you see, are based more on current affairs. All of these are based on the generic aspects of the subjects. So if you have a good command over static, and if you have a better acumen, that is the aptitude, bureaucratic aptitude to understand the issues of India, you will find that these questions were easily handled. Okay, chaliye, wish you all the best. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sahil and I shall be dealing with the society questions here. So let's see the question number 8. So question 8 reads, how does smart city in India addresses the issue of urban poverty and distributive justice? Okay. Now, as this particular question is concerned, so first of all, what will be the structure of this particular answer? First of all, introduction. Now in introduction, what I can do? I can briefly elaborate about the smart city mission. Fine. Now, as it is just a 10 marker question, I'll be ensuring that my introduction should not be more than 3.5 or 4 lines. It is better if we keep it within the 3 lines. So when we talk about the smart city mission, so I can just elaborate on few basic aspects of the smart city mission. Smart city mission is ambitious program of the government of India, which aimed to transform life in 100 cities, which aimed to transform urban living in 100 cities. Smart city mission has focused on 3 priorities. Smart city mission has focused on 3 priorities, and these 3 priorities are providing efficient services, B, robust infra, and sustainable development. These are the 3 drivers of the smart city mission in India. Okay, smart city mission largely has followed 3-pronged approach, and that 3-pronged approach is number 1, it focuses on city improvement. Now, as city improvement is concerned, here the retrofitting of the cities will be done. Now, when we talk about the retrofitting of the cities, so old cities will be equipped with smart solutions. Then the second pillar of the smart city mission is city renewal. So first is city improvement, second is a city renewal. So basically, as a city renewal is concerned, so what will be done? So there will be the complete transformation of the identified areas. Here there will be the focus on complete transformation of identified areas. Old and redundant infrastructure will be replaced with modern infrastructure. Old and redundant infrastructure will be replaced with modern infrastructure. And then the third pillar of the smart city happens to be city extension. So city extension pillar is largely focused on greenfield development. So basically, the existing cities often they fail to accommodate the incoming migration. So on the fringes, there will be the redevelopment. Okay, sub-city programs will be developed. So these will be kind of the satellite spaces that will be developed. For example, this is a big city. On the fringes, satellite sub-cities will be developed. Now, a question might be there in your mind that I said that you have to compress all this in 3 lines, but I have filled the entire board. So how to do it in the examination? So if I am writing the examination, I will be compressing all this particular information such as this. Smart city mission is ambitious program to transform urban living in 100 cities, which focuses on efficient services, robust infra, and sustainable development. Then I will make a Sun diagram, or I will make such kind of a thing that 3 principles of smart city is city improvement, city renewal, and city extension. So basically a kind of a diagrammatic representation will be there, and there will be the 2.5 lines that I have used in explaining all this particular kind of a content. So by this particular thing, I'll be able to break the monotony of the answer, linear answering, and it will also not take much of the words. Filler words we have to avoid. Okay, so this will be the introduction part. Now after this, I will be addressing the core demand of the question. Now core demand of the question is in 2 parts. First of all, how smart city will address urban poverty, and how it will ensure distributive justice. So basically what I'll be doing, I'll be adding a link line, and in the link line, smart city. So I will add a link line, and the link line will be how smart city aims to address urban poverty. How smart city aims to address poverty. Okay. Now basically, as this particular part is concerned, I will advise that if it is possible, if we can add the case studies, it will further improve the quality of our answer. Improve the quality of answer. So basically, under the smart city mission, innovative approaches such as placemaking are encouraged. Placemaking is encouraged. Now, what is the placemaking concept? So basically, placemaking is to reclaim abandoned sites and to convert them in utilitarian spaces. For example, there is a dump yard. Now that dump yard, people are just throwing the garbage. That dump yard will be reclaimed. It will be converted in a children's park. It can be converted in some other utilitarian space. A community center could be built over that. So basically, this is what the placemaking is all about. So under the smart city mission, under the placemaking project, multiple such utilitarian spaces have been delivered. For example, children's park in Greater Warangal, children's park in Greater Warangal. There is an Anganwadi center that has been developed under a flyover in Vadodara city. Okay, so through the placemaking concepts, such utilitarian spaces are being developed. Now a question comes that how I will be connecting it with the poverty aspect. So often for the poor people, recreational spaces have been inaccessible, which impacts their ease of living. So recreational poverty is addressed by such innovative approaches, and here add the 2 examples, Greater Warangal's example, and also add the example of the Vadodara city. Example of the actually this pen is not working. So example of the Vadodara city we can add. Moving on in this particular direction. Secondly, if you remember, we have discussed that smart city also focuses on the retrofitting element. So basically, through retrofitting, what is happening? Basic services are being provided to the people. Okay, so basic services are being provided. When we talk about the basic services, in this particular direction, sanitation is being provided, healthcare is being provided. For example, in Delhi, there are mohalla clinics that have been opened up. Okay. Now moving in this particular direction. Moreover, what happens? Smart city mission through its retrofitting of the existing city. Through its retrofitting of the existing city, focuses on poor people. How it focuses on poor people? Poor people has faced the denial of poor people has faced the denial of basic services. Denial of basic services. Now, in this particular direction, now what has happened? Special focus is being made on ensuring the health infrastructure, ensuring the sanitation, ensuring that they are getting the piped drinking water. They are getting the piped drinking water. So by this particular thing, denial of infrastructure, inaccessibility of basic services, that was always the problem. It is getting addressed. Here we can give the case study of Indore Smart City. Here we can give the case study of Indore Smart City. Now, when we talk about the Indore Smart City, so basically Indore Smart City has provided 24/7 water supply, 24/7 water supply to the slum areas through the smart metering concept. Secondly, what has happened in this particular direction? Secondly, LED street lighting has been provided to all the areas that were marked as slum. Okay, in fact, now those slum areas are being redeveloped, and Indore is a very good example in this particular direction. So through this, poverty is being addressed, poverty element is being addressed. Then third dimension that we have in this particular direction is mobility. Then we have mobility. Now, when mobility aspect is concerned, so often people in cities, poor people, they have spent a lot of money in just commuting, which impacts their disposable income. Now, what has happened? Moreover, also what happens, many of the crucial productive working hours are wasted in the commuting. So basically, in the smart city, smart transport systems are being developed. Smart transport systems are being developed. Okay. Systems such as RRTS are being developed. Now they provide fast, efficient, and affordable transportation. So ease of mobility, which is a very big concern for the poor people, it is getting addressed. They are able to save more. They are able to save their productive working hours, and they can spend that particular time in more productive tasks. So by that, poor people are being focused. Then the next dimension that we have in this particular direction, according to UN Center for Human Settlement, there is a phenomena that is impacting all the urban areas in the world. That is the problem of housing poverty. Now, basically, with the integration of Awas Yojana with the Smart City Mission, what has happened? Specific focus is being made on the housing needs of the poor people. Moreover, as the extension of the Awas Yojana after the COVID pandemic, so you might be knowing about the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan that was launched. So as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, extension of the Awas Yojana was done, and affordable rental housing complex scheme is being provided. Affordable rental housing complex scheme is there. In this affordable rental housing complex scheme, the migrant people who have migrated to the cities, they will be provided the rental houses. And in this particular direction, we have a successful example of Surat Smart City that has implemented it. We have the case study of Surat Smart City. Surat Smart City. Now, basically what has happened, integration of integration of the affordable Awas Yojana has been there. Under the Awas Yojana, there is affordable rental housing scheme, and their integration with the Smart City Mission has happened. So by that, also the focus on the poor is being made. Then further moving on in this particular direction, also it focuses on the distributive justice element. It focuses on the distributive justice element as well. Now, basically, when we talk about the smart city, under the smart city, area-based development approach is used. area-based development approach is used. Under this area-based development, when the city development is going on, slums are integrated rather than segregated. So under the area-based development, slum integration is done. Slum integration is done, which ensures the distributive justice. Then next, now the adaptation plans are being merged with the smart city. So adaptation plans are being merged with the smart city. So basically, there are many threats and challenges that are emerging. For example, IPCC, IPCC 6th assessment report has concluded this particular thing, that the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius will happen before 2030. So adaptation is something which is very important. Now, whenever the climate change impacts strike, when the disaster strikes, who are the most vulnerable? Poor people are the most vulnerable. Now, adaptation plan that climate change is going to happen, how to deal with that? So adaptation plans are now being merged with a smart city, and when the better adaptation plans will be there, poor who are disproportionately more impacted, they will be protected, and by that effective distributive justice will come. Effective distributive justice will come. Then next, moving on in this particular direction, what is happening? Under the smart city, special focus is being made on digital inclusion. Special focus is being made on the digital inclusion. So basically, there are the e-governance platforms that are being promoted. There are the common service centers that are CSCs, common service centers that are being developed in the slum areas, which provide the basic governance facilities to the poor people. Now the poor who were earlier excluded are now being included through the digital governance initiatives. So this is how the distributive justice is also being delivered. Now, after this we'll conclude. So basically, as the conclusion part is concerned, so okay. So as the conclusion part is concerned, in conclusion, we can provide this particular thing, that smart city mission, though primarily did not focus on poverty alleviation, but through its effective implementation and design, it has emerged as a scheme which holds immense potential. However, through timely social equity audits, it needed to be assessed that how smart city can be repivoted to effectively emerge as the pillar of poverty alleviation as well as to deliver the distributive justice. Okay, so this is something. Now the word in the conclusion that we need to use is social equity audits. Economic audits are being done, developmental audits are happening, social equity audits, that how far it has promoted the social equity. Such audits are needed to be done. So this is all the important aspects that we could have added in this particular question. Now moving on in this particular direction, the next we have here. Okay, so the question number 10. Do you think that globalization results in only an aggressive consumer culture? Justify your answer. Now understand this particular thing. If you read the question, so question reads only aggressive consumer culture. Now a better approach to address this particular answer is to give the viewpoints on both the sides. Okay, so let's get started. Now, first of all, the introduction part comes. Now understand this particular thing. In introduction part, we have two approaches. Number one, you can define the keyword that is globalization. But that will be a very basic approach to start the introduction. Though it's not wrong, but more impressive could be if you can give views of a scholar or a thinker or any prominent personality on the globalization, and that you can connect with the demand of the question. For example, Kofi Annan, former UN Secretary General, defined globalization as irreversible phenomena, which takes in account the pervasive nature of globalization. And such pervasive globalization has impacted all the corners of society, economy, culture, etc. So this will be the introduction, and from here I will go to the core demand of the question. Okay, so I will add a link line. Globalization's impact on aggressive consumer culture. Globalization's impact in developing aggressive consumer culture. So basically, we first of all will define that what aggressive consumer culture is about. Now, if you will see this particular thing, because it is a 10 marker question, I will not elaborate it too much. Okay, just the keywords. Okay, so you can see this particular thing. Aggressive consumer culture is characterized by three things. Number one, materialism driven lifestyle. Second, brand conscious and status symbol dependency. Brand consciousness and status symbol dependency. And third is debt financed consumption beyond actual buying capacity. Okay, so today you see people are buying iPhone, though they are buying iPhone on EMI, but they are buying iPhone. Though their incomes that don't support them, that they buy an 1 lakh rupees iPhone, but still they are buying. So basically, debt financed consumption. A new model of iPhone has come. I need to buy it. Doesn't matter whether my old phone is still functional, whether I have money or not, but debt financed consumption. So what is aggressive consumer culture? Aggressive consumer culture is characterized by material-driven lifestyle, brand consciousness and status symbol dependency, debt financed consumption. Okay. Now, how globalization is leading to it? So I'll write 2 or 3 points that how globalization is leading to it. Then a counterpoint that it's not only the case, globalization has led to some other positive impacts as well. So how it is leading to it? Globalization drove Walmartization. Now, what is Walmartization? Walmartization refers to popping up of hyper retail chains on the lines of Walmart in the developing countries. Now, these Walmart-like stores are designed by keeping in mind psychological tricks. These stores, they push you to excessive consumeristic tendencies, and by that the culture of aggressive consumer emerges. Clear or not? So this is there. Just imagine you might have went to food bazaar, big bazaar, something like that. Okay, and when you enter there, you might have entered thinking that I want to buy these 5 items, but the way these layouts are there, the way these stores are designed, they'll trick you at so many points and you'll end up buying 10-15 items. So through Walmartization effect, through popping of the giant retail stores that have happened after the globalization, aggressive consumer culture is being driven. And then next is West toxification effect. So basically what has happened? Globalization has positioned the consumerist West societies as ideal model, as ideal template. So globalization has positioned consumerist or consumeristic Western societies as ideal societies. Such societies have been positioned as aspirational societies. We copy the West just for the sake of it, because globalization has created this particular narrative, and we are consuming more because simply they are consuming more. That has happened. Then after that, post-globalization, aggressive marketing campaign by MNCs, marketing campaign by the MNCs. They have changed the values of frugality towards the value of consumption. Fine. Then Then what has happened? Post-globalization, post-globalization, the MNCs, they have really cracked the supply chain efficiency. Through the supply chain efficiency, products have become more accessible. And as products have become more accessible, we are consuming them more. Simply, a thing is arriving tomorrow, I'll order it, I'll buy it. The moment, now you see this particular thing, after the globalization, as supply chain efficiency has emerged, such kind of values are emerging. Also, what is happening? Globalization has made some cultural impacts as well. So basically, what is happening? Celebrity culture has promoted luxury brands, etc. By that, aggressive consumer culture emerges. Okay, film and television advertising is leading to such kind of a phenomena. Okay, so this is how the aggressive consumer culture has emerged. But now I will be taking the flip side. I will say that globalization is not about aggressive consumer culture. Globalization has led to some other meaningful impacts as well. What meaningful impacts have happened? Democratization of knowledge has emerged. Okay, post globalization, tech platforms have emerged. Tech globalization has happened, and because of the tech globalization, platforms such as Udemy, open platforms such as YouTube, etc., has enabled learning which was earlier guarded. That has happened. Then after that, globalization induced multinational companies have followed the gender parity policy, and in this particular gender parity policy, women have been given equal opportunities. And because women have been given equal opportunities, women's economic mobility, economic upliftment has happened. Then after that, tech globalization opened opportunities for elderly people. How it opened opportunity for the elderly people? The biggest concern for elderly people was loneliness, but tech globalization led to the emergence of social media, and by that, now they are more connected with their extended family. Now they are better connected with their children, and their loneliness concerns have got addressed. Now the drill is that I will show the impact on different sections of society. Number one, democratization of knowledge. It will impact youth. Globalization induced MNCs, gender parity policy, they will impact women. Tech globalization provided customized media, provided them the option to get connected, stay in connect with their children. That is what is happening. Also, what has happened? Globalization has provided new markets to the indigenous products, have provided new market to tribal products, which have revived their culture, which have given a revival to their products, and also have given them a meaningful employment. So the impact on tribal is also there. Okay, now we will conclude. So basically, as conclusion is concerned, in conclusion, I can simply write that the globalization is a double-edged process. Globalization is double-edged process. Globalization is a double-edged process. Its characters, whether it will be positive, whether it will be negative, whether it will enable, whether it will cripple. So its characters will depend on how societies negotiate between consumerism and inclusive globalization. Globalization can lead to consumerism, globalization can lead to inclusive societies. How societies negotiate between these two, it will make globalization as what phase it will take. So this is all about this particular question. Now moving on to the next question. How do you account for the growing fast food industries, given that there are increased health concerns in modern society? Illustrate your answer with the Indian experience. So this is really the true thing that is happening, that today we have so much of awareness about the lifestyle diseases that are emerging, and we know that these diseases are partly because of the unhealthy food that we are eating, but still we are consuming them more and more. So there is awareness, and at the same time there is more consumption of such kind of unhealthy products. Okay, so basically in introduction what I can do, in introduction I can accept this anomaly that is happening. So we can see this particular thing, that growth of fast food in India, despite health concerns, reflects a paradox of modern society. Reflects a paradox of modern society, where convenience is outweighing awareness. Awareness is there, convenience is also there, but convenience has trumped the awareness. Okay, so now the body I'll divide in two parts. Number one, what are the factors behind the growth of such fast food industry in India? And the second part will be there, that though such health awareness has also come, why we are still consuming them. So now understand this particular thing, that the question specifically focuses on Indian experience. Now, as a question is focusing on Indian experience, I need to use some quota or I need to quote some data. I need to quote some fact to showcase here the impact on India. So basically here there is one data that we can use, that India's QSR market, that is quick service restaurant market. Okay, so India's, before going in the factors, I will use the data. India's QSR, quick service restaurant market is projected to reach 800 billion rupees, not dollar, rupees, is projected to reach 800 billion rupees by 2025, by the end of 2025, which shows that the increase is going on in the Indian market, which shows that such market has increased. Now, what are the factors? Because it is a 15 marker answer, fine, we have to write it in 250 words. So we can explore this particular kind of a dimension as well. So what are the factors? Number one, factors. So as factors are concerned, number one is urban lifestyles. Urban lifestyles. Now, urban lifestyles, as we talk about it, they are characterized by two things. Number one, they are characterized by time scarcity. Okay. And secondly, often they are characterized by dual income households. Because of dual income, I have money, but I don't have time. Though I have money, I don't have time. What I will do? Rather than spending time in exploring the healthy options, I will explore quick options where the fast food will emerge. So basically what has happened here, so there is a time scarcity and dual incomes that are there at the same time. Which has led to the demand for quick meals. And as demand for quick meal has emerged, what has happened? Fast food culture is increasing. This is one very important factor that we have. After that, the next factor that we have here is role of globalization. Because of the globalization, what has happened? Entry of MNCs have happened. Entry of food MNCs have happened, such as McDonald's, KFC, etc., which has focused on aggressive marketing campaign. And because of this aggressive marketing campaign, what has happened? The demand for such kind of foods have also increased. After that, young demographics. After that, young demography of India. After that, young demography of India, which often prefers a taste over long-term health and well-being. So that is something that has happened. Also, after that, what has happened? Technology as enabler. Role of technology as enabler. Now, emergence of food delivery apps such as Zomato, Swiggy, etc. They have also made fast food more accessible anytime. Earlier, the fast food was not that accessible. We were not eating it that much. Because now it is too much accessible. We are now eating it that much. Clear or not? So these are the factors. Now, moving on in this particular direction. So basically, though fast food has high health concerns, but still the fast food is being preferred. What are the reasons that we have in this particular direction? Now, so what I'll do, I'll put a link line here. After this, I will put a link line that though fast food has health impacts, but still it is being consumed more and more. It is being consumed more and more due to, and then pointers 1, 2, 3. Why it is being consumed more and more? Number one, what has happened? So short-term gratification has dominated the decision making. Short-term gratification has dominated the decision making. Now, short-term gratifications. These foods, they have so much high sodium content, they have so much sugary content is so much, and food engineering that goes in this. What has happened? They make such foods very attractive, and often we are not able to resist the taste. So short-term gratification that I will get by eating the food, it trumps the decision making, and often rather than the healthy option, I go for the tasty option. Okay, economic factors are there. Now, as economic factors are concerned, often we see this particular thing that the fast food options are cheaper than the healthier options, and because they're the cheaper, they are the ones which are more preferred. Then the third reason that we have is weak regulations. Then the third option that we have is weak regulation. Often due to weak regulations, because government has not been able to regulate the junk food market, it is sold and it is being bought aggressively, particularly the people who don't have that much health awareness. Okay. Fourth, aspirational value associated with dining out. So basically, often dining out, eating pizza, etc. is seen as a status symbol. Because of that, the new youth, they are also getting attracted by such kind of things. Okay. Then after that, so labeling awareness in India is not there. Okay. Often what has happened? Because people don't focus on label, just they focus on the photograph. On tomato ketchup packet, there are the tomatoes that are being made. At the backside, in label, it is written that how much tomato content is there, but we never read that kind of a thing. So because of that also, such kind of issues are emerging. Okay, so this is how we can address the demand of this particular question. Okay, fine. So that is about this. In the conclusion, what I need to do? So in conclusion, you see, Richard Thaler has quoted this particular thing that the idea of Homo economicus is flawed. Human is not rational. Human is emotional. And often emotions trump the rationality. This is something that we can see in this particular situation also. So as Richard Thaler suggested that humans are not rational rather than emotional, their emotions trump the rationality. And that is why even after having the awareness that the junk food are not healthy, they are being consumed more, because the gratification that they give, satiation that they give, that drives more emotional responses. Fine. That drives more basically what I am trying to say is that the gratification that you are getting, the taste buds that are getting satisfied by that, okay, the satisfaction that comes by that, it often wins over the long-term health impacts that will happen because of eating that. Okay, so this is something that you can do here. Okay, so that is about it. And now moving on, we have the other question. Okay, so here we have question number 20. So question number 20 says, does tribal development in India center around two axes, those of displacement and rehabilitation? Rehabilitation, give your opinion. Give your opinion. Now, first of all, before we go in this particular question, understand the framework or the basic structure is that it has been the case that displacement and rehabilitation are the two aspects of the tribal policy, but this is not the complete picture. Clear? So we will not say that yes, this is only what has happening. So basically, we can say this particular thing. First of all, introduction. In introduction, I can say tribal displacement. Tribal development. So in introduction, I can say tribal development has been assumed to be historically dominated on two axes. So have been assumed historically to be dominated on two axes, that is displacement and then rehabilitation. Displacement and the rehabilitation. Now we can see it in colonial times, and it can be seen even in the times post independence. This is something that I will write in the that is something that I will write in the introduction. Okay, now colonial times. So main body, how in colonial times displacement and rehabilitation was focused. So in colonial times, what happened? The forests were announced as colonial property. And because of that particular thing, tribal people were declared as encroachers, due to which mass tribal displacement happened. Now as mass tribal displacement happened, then there was a backlash that came from the tribal people, and backlash was in the form of tribal revolts. Then what has happened? Then British focused on rehabilitation. It was not a full-fledged rehabilitation, but a half-hearted attempt that was taken. How they tried to rehabilitate them back? By declaring the tribal areas as excluded and partially excluded area. Example, Government of India Act 1935. Clear or not? British followed isolationist policies that no one will enter the tribal area. Partially excluded and excluded areas were announced in Government of India Act 1935, and by that they thought that the rehabilitation will come. Active involvement was not there, but this was their approach of rehabilitating them. Clear or not? Now post-independence. Now next comes is the post-independence. Now next comes post-independence. So basically, when we talk about the post-independence, now post-independence, what is happening? Tribal displacement happened. Now tribal displacement happened because of the developmental projects. For example, dam development projects, infrastructure projects, industrial complexes. Clear or not? And in response to this displacement that has happened by the development, rehabilitation was focused. Now the rehabilitation is being focused by multiple ways. Okay. Now, as the displacement has already happened by these particular kind of a thing, so rehabilitation was done by relocating them at the different places. As the forests are being destroyed, there is the compensatory afforestation that has been brought. There is social impact assessment that is being brought. This is something that has happened. Okay, so this will be the half of the body. However, it is not the complete story. In India, tribal development has been taken beyond the displacement and rehabilitation. Okay, so tribal development has been taken beyond. अरे यार, ये यहाँ कर रहे थे हम लोग. जो लास्ट वाला कट था ना, उसको भी कटवा देना. मतलब वो तो कटवा दोगे, ये भी कटवा देना. पता नहीं कब से लगवाना है. मैं इस वाली स्लाइड के ऊपर पे था, फिर हमने वो बीच में करा, फिर उसके बाद में वो करा, वो भी सब कटवा के अब यहीं पे आएगा। हाँ, ठीक है। Now, the rehabilitation government would be focusing through multiple ways. Now, how the government is going to focus on the rehabilitation? Government will focus on the rehabilitation by ensuring that they are relocated. Okay, by ensuring that when the forests are being diverted, there is a compensatory afforestation that is being done. Okay, for effective rehabilitation, more powers will be given to the Gram Sabhas. But this is not the complete picture. Okay, so right now, till this particular point, the half of the answer we have met. Now, moving on. This is something that has happened. Now I will add a link line. And in this particular link line, I will provide this particular thing. However, government's focus on tribal development has been beyond just the binary of displacement and rehabilitation. Okay, which can be seen through the Nehruvian Panchashil. Now, basically, as we talk about the Nehruvian Panchashil, Nehruvian Panchashil has focused on 5 principles. Principle number 1, tribal should be allowed to develop according to their own genius. Principle number 2, tribals' rights in the land and forest should be respected. Principle number 3, tribal teams should be trained to undertake the development without introducing too many outsiders. Fourth is that tribal development should be taken without disturbing their cultural and social institutions. And fifth is that the index of tribal development should not the money that is being spent, it is the improvement in the quality of life that has come. So you just define the tribal Panchashil, and you can say that we have went beyond the development and beyond the displacement and rehabilitation. India has focused the overarching policy of the Nehruvian Panchashil, which has guided the tribal development. Moreover, the impact of Nehruvian Panchashil can be seen on the policy aspects also. For example, PISA Act was enacted. That is Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas Act, which tried to give the political empowerment to the tribal areas. There is the Forest Right Act 2006 that was provided, which gave the community rights as well as individual right to the tribal people. It ensured economic empowerment of the tribal people. Then SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act is there, where STs are being focused. Here what is happening? Social empowerment of tribal people is being done. Okay, there are the dedicated constitutional bodies, that is National Commission for Scheduled Tribe, Article 338A. By that, what is happening? Social empowerment of the tribal people is going on. Moreover, government comes with the specific schemes. Here, just quote some schemes. For example, Dharti Aba Gram Janjatiya Utkarsh Abhiyan. There is PM Janman, where specific focus is being made on the PVTG tribes. Okay, there is a dedicated ministry, that is a Ministry of Tribal Affairs. So all these particular things, you can say that focus on the tribal development is not the bare minimum, that is the binary of displacement and rehabilitation. The development goes beyond the displacement and rehabilitation. They are being empowered. Okay, in fact, 5th and 6th schedule also, if you want, you can add that particular thing. Clear or not? So after that, the conclusion part will come. And in the conclusion part, what I will say this particular thing. Tribal development has been at the core of the developmental policy of India, which has been holistic and overarching beyond just the displacement and rehabilitation binary, which has improved the quality of life of tribal people. However, more is to be achieved. Okay, this is something that you can do. So guys, that would be about this particular question. I hope that you have got utility by attending this particular session. Thank you so much.
Hello students. The topic or the question? Hello
Hello, students. The question that we're going to talk about is the ethos of civil service in India stand for the combination of professionalism with nationalistic consciousness. Elucidate. 150 words, 10 marker. This question has come in GS paper 1, and it is in relation to post-independence consolidation, but it has linkages to GS paper 2 in relation to governance and also to GS paper 4 in relation to governance. Now, how would you start with the introduction? You have a basic intro in relation to the civil services itself. You end up saying, and you link it back to GS paper 1, not to GS paper 2 or 4, you end up saying that it is the steel framework of India. Who has said this? Sardar Patel. Right? Steel framework of India ensured democratic governance within India. And the primary aspect that was undertaken by the civil services was nation building and state building. Nation building and state building. When we talk about nation building is an idea whereby you create national consciousness. You create the feeling among the people of India that they belong to India. You amplify Article 1 of the Constitution. India, that is Bharat. And you amplify what has been written in the preamble. We, the people of India. That there should be a nationalist feeling from the northeast to Jammu Kashmir, to the south, to the Andaman, Lakshadweep, Nicobar Islands, to every part of the territory of India, that we are one people. We share fraternity and we belong to a nation known as India. So that became one part, which was the idea of building the nation. State building is the building of institutions. Institutions like the Election Commission. Institutions whereby people trust the various form of government processes that have been undertaken in independent India, such as the 1952 elections. Trust within the civil servant that they're going to ensure the welfare scheme and the welfare of the people. Trust in the parliament. Trust in the executive. Trust within the chief minister. Trust within the legislative assembly. Both of those aspects together was a responsibility of the civil services in India. So you end up highlighting all of these three aspects. The steel framework set by Sardar Patel, the idea that the civil services had to undertake democratic governance of India, and that they were responsible for nation and state building. Right? Then you move to the next part. If you look at this question, it is divided into two parts. Right? Ethos of civil services in relation to first, professionalism, and second, nationalistic consciousness. So you make sure that you end up dividing this into two parts in your UPSC answer. So if you take first in relation to professionalism, you end up highlighting the constitutional safeguards that were introduced post our independence. Provided for a legal framework for civil services. Article 312 provides for all India services, provides for uniform standards and a maintenance of national integration. Further, there is security of tenure that was constitutionally provided for the civil servants. Why? So that they have independence from political pressures, whether at the union or at the state level. There was a merit-based exams, which we still continue with, the UPSC examination itself for civil services examination. There was an aspect of neutrality and impartiality that was introduced. How was it introduced? Through the Civil Services Conduct Rules 1955 and the Service Cadre Rules of 1954. You also end up highlighting one of the things that the British did, that if you take the example of the Imperial Police Service, the Imperial Forest Services, they never recruited women there. So when we got our independence, when India got independence, one of the first things that the independent India government ended up doing was actually allow women to also be part of the civil servants in relation to such services, like the police service, the forest service, and others. So all of these points together, you end up highlighting as aspects of professionalism from the perspective of GS paper 1. Then you highlight another paragraph or another section, which is related to nationalistic consciousness. One of the things that happened with the All India services is that before, when they were imperial services, they were meant to serve the British. Indians were treated as subjects of the British Empire, and the primary objective of the imperial services at that time was to maintain law and order. When we got our independence and we became Republic of India, it transformed officers into symbols of unity, development, and continuity. Meaning now their responsibility is not only law and order, but the responsibility is the welfare of the Indian people. Their responsibility is to ensure national consciousness. Their responsibility is to ensure that there is integration of the princely states and other parts that became part of the Republic of India. So they had to undertake both nation building. So it included, you can give the example, rehabilitation of post-partition, meaning people that came from Bengal and people that came from Punjab, basically from East Pakistan and West Pakistan, they had to be rehabilitated within India. Further, there was also the aspect of the integration of the princely states. More than 500 princely states joined India. Later on, after independence, you had Jammu Kashmir, Travancore, Cochin, various other parts that also became part of India. Right? Then you end up highlighting the various state building aspects that they undertook, implementing the 5-year plans, land reforms, and welfare schemes. Further, the All India services have a federal character, meaning they are hired by the union and deployed in the state. Right? So this is still the same procedure that we continue with today. Why? Because it highlights nationalistic consciousness, that you can be from Tamil Nadu and serve in Punjab. You can be from Haryana and serve in Kerala. The All India character of the All India services. Apart from this, you highlight various other aspects where the civil services, through textbooks that they wrote, promotion of national symbols like Independence Day, Republic Day, National Anthem, and all of this, the various other grassroots activities that the civil servants undertook to maintain nationalistic consciousness within India. So all of these points together, you end up highlighting in terms of professionalism and in terms of nationalistic consciousness. Then you come to the conclusion. In a conclusion, you can give a way forward. What happens is, now you can make the interlinkages with GS paper 2 and GS paper 4. So we have talked about the idea of professionalism, the idea of nationalistic consciousness in relation to post-independence. You can make the way forward on how these aspects are still continuing today. So for professionalism, you can highlight the example of the current government of minimum government, maximum governance. You can highlight various schemes like Mission Karam Yogi, ACR reports, the idea of lateral entry that has been introduced. Similarly, in terms of nationalistic consciousness, we still continue with the All India examination. We have allowed and expanded on affirmative action, that we allow for reservation for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, backward classes, PWDs, and other aspects in terms of on how the All India services or civil services has become much more inclusive. Right? And lastly, you end with the line that the civil services has strengthened India's integrity and unity. You can also end up highlighting a particular line from the second ARC report, which ends up highlighting that the civil services have largely fulfilled the expectations that were set to them at the time of our independence. So it's a popular line from the second ARC report. So if you look at the question, 150 words, you don't have a huge word limit. Give a basic introduction where you end up highlighting what Sardar Patel had said, democratic governance, and that the civil servants were responsible for nation and state building. You give various points under professionalism, various points under nationalistic consciousness, and you end the conclusion by linking the current affairs. Right? By linking current affairs and by linking GS paper 2 and GS paper 4 in relation to governance. And your answer would be done.